Report with Sam Seder.
The destiny of America is always safer in the hands of the people than in the conference rooms of any elite.
Sam Seder.
They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
Ever get the feeling you've been cheated?
It is Tuesday, December 1st, 2020. My name is Sam Seder. This is the five-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, from Slate, Mark Joseph Stern in the Census case at the Supreme Court, and then Rachel Cohen and Marcia Brown in the American Prospect on how Democrats can end run a conservative court. Meanwhile, a gang of four, or is it eight, unveil a $900 billion stimulus. This as millions face loss of paid leave, unemployment insurance, eviction protection. Meanwhile, COVID threatening to overrun California hospitals, and New York State calls health workers back from retirement. Trump has raised $170 million, all since Election Day, in one of the greatest scams in U.S. history, if not the greatest scam. CDC now says that COVID was in the U.S. as early as last mid-December. Trump's attempt at a super broad Flynn pardon may have missed the mark. And Atlas shrugs, and then he skulks away. Trump's dangerous COVID advisor quits in disgrace. Meanwhile, Ohio Republicans are trying to impeach Republican Governor Mike DeWine over his COVID rules. Ajit Pai, the net neutrality killer, to step down from the FCC on January 20th. And farm workers sued Trump administration over their wage freeze through 2023. All this and more on today's Majority Report. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Emma Vigeland is here with me. Hello, Emma.
Hello, Sam. How are you today?
Well, I'm hanging in there. Just battling COVID pandemic fatigue.
Negative test for Sam
No,
before the show, giving us a big boost.
There we go. So we're feeling a little bit more secure. I mean, I haven't seen your test, but I mean, it's not. Well, we, of course, just a reminder, we are actually in the same studio, however, separated by a large plastic tarp that runs about 15 feet across. We have our air filters over there, multiple air filters working on that end of the...
And an open window in the winter.
Open window?
Well, not technically winter yet, but...
and a fan and a CO2 measurer so that we can assure that the air circulation in here is as close to being outside as possible. And last I checked, we were very, very close, somewhere around between 400 and 500. I don't know what that measures, but let's get right to it today. We got a lot of folks. It's pretty busy around these parts. We are, of course, now about 5 weeks, almost maybe to the day, for the special election in Georgia, which is going to, frankly, implicate some of what we're talking about today with our guests, but also fundamentally a whole host of material issues for the American public. If the Democrats are able to pick up 2 seats in Georgia, uphill battle, no doubt, it's going to allow them to do things like pass additional stimulus through something like reconciliation. It is going to allow them to quickly approve of Joe Biden's cabinet picks It's going to allow them to theoretically, at least quickly, approve his judicial picks. It is going to have a tremendous bearing on the functionality of our government. I don't think we're going to see, with a 50-50 tie and Kamala Harris breaking the votes, incredibly progressive legislation necessarily.
No.
But we will see some basic functions of government happen, like a stimulus bill, perhaps. We will talk about the stimulus bill that's going to be announced today, coming out of the Senate with a gang of 4, maybe 8, depending on how you count it. But that is a
progressive
bipartisan.
Champion, Joe Manchin involved.
Exactly.
Yeah, but it's exactly going to be a lot of legislation like what we're seeing, middle of the road, centrist ideas. But the thing that Georgia could prevent is enabling the ungoverning, which is what the Republican Party has become and wants to do, which is dismantling government, doing away with government. Trump has been a wrecking ball to that. They used to like to do it in more behind the scenes ways. Trump's doing it front and center, but it's key to ensuring that the government at least functions smallly for people in this country.
Bare minimum.
Right.
However, it appears that Donald Trump is inhibiting the Republican efforts to win these 2 seats in Georgia. I still think it's a bit of a long shot, but it's certainly one that becomes a shorter shot every day with Donald Trump doing stuff like this. Here is Donald Trump tweeting out, attacking Brian Kemp. Yesterday, I heard, put this up on the screen. Yesterday, here it is. Do something, Brian Kemp. You allowed your state to be scammed. We must check signatures and count signed envelopes against ballots. Then call off election. It won't be needed. We all win. I'm not quite sure I understand any of this, but I guess what he's saying is that if Brian Kemp follows his prescription, then all the 2 Senate races will already have been resolved for the Republicans. But you see the problem here, because he is telling the Georgian people, and we did it. We played a clip from Ronna McDaniel yesterday, the GOP chair of the Republican National Party, where people in our audience were saying it's all fixed. Doesn't matter if we vote. So
and also you're trying to make the case, or Trump is trying to make the case, that Brian Kemp isn't sufficiently on the Republican side in terms of voting and vote rigging, basically.
Right. And he
was an extremist back when he was running against
without a doubt,
Abrams, and continues to be.
But his argument is not just that he's not rigging the vote for Trump. He's arguing that he has rigged the vote for Joe Biden and the Democrats. And in which case, if you're a Republican voter, why would you go to the polls? What a waste.
Stay home. I mean, the governor is clearly in the pocket of George Soros, of Hugo Chavez, of the Babadook. All of these people are working with Brian Kemp and Joe Biden to ensure that Republicans never gain power again. Stay home, stay safe.
That's Trump's message. And here is Kayleigh McEnany, and she's on Fox and Friends this morning. Now, here's the tricky part. This is the sort of fun parlor game that people play. Is Kayleigh McEnany going on the show as the White House spokesperson, or is she going on as the campaign spokesperson? Well, we don't know what hat she's wearing until she gets there.
And Kayleigh McEnany, she's the White House press secretary. It looks like she's on the North Lawn. Kayleigh, good morning to you.
Great to join you.
Good to have you. Okay, so Griff was just talking about the situation down in Georgia where they've got the twin runoff races first week in January. And he brought up, the president is talking about how the election was rigged. And there are a number of Republicans who are worried that that kind of thing could backfire on that particular runoff election, because they say, if it's rigged, if the 2020 November election was rigged and this one's rigged, why should I even bother voting?
Yeah, I'll leave it to the campaign to pontificate on the president's strategy with regards to...
Well, sometimes you're with the campaign, so you know the thinking there.
I do. I'm joining you in my official capacity today from the White House lawn, but I'll say this. The president has been unapologetic.
Pause it for one
second.
second.
Okay, pause it. I'm sorry. I got to get used to saying pause it. first of all, Trump does campaign events and did campaign events from the White House lawn regularly. So that does not preclude the capacity that she would be in. And really what it is she puts on the white hat. She's for the White House. If she puts on the red MAGA hat, she's a part of the campaign, and she'll switch them on and off on cable news based on the questions that she's facing and the ones she doesn't want to answer. So that was a way to deflect.
I have an alternate theory.
Go on.
I have an alternate theory. It is that on the White House lawn, if she is next to one of the hedges, she is with the campaign. If she is on the other side of the hedges, she is with the White House. And so that way she can do multiple hits.
Yeah, right.
She takes one step over here and she does that. And then she takes a step over here and she does that. Continue.
For the last 10 months in saying that mail-in voting, mass mail-in voting is subject to fraud. This has been a key part of what he's talked about when it comes to election integrity. He wants to make sure signatures are matched. Right. The mail-in voting is sacrosanct and is treated with the integrity that every American vote deserves, that it's actually encapsulating the vote of the American people.
But yeah, that was just a word salad at the end there. Right. She got thrown off by, which hat she was wearing. But I think this could be a problem for the Republicans in Georgia. And frankly, I would not have a big issue with that. You reap what you sow. But first, we will get to Mark Joseph Stern in just a moment. First, a word from our sponsor. This, of course, is the season where people start to look to give to some charities. And for over 10 years, GiveWell.org has helped people who are looking to give find the charities and projects that save and improve lives most per dollar. Here's how they do it. GiveWell dedicates over 20,000 hours a year researching charitable organizations and handpicks a few of the highest impact, evidence-backed charities that are out there. All of their research is publicly available. You can look at it for free on their website. And since 2010, GiveWell has helped over 50,000 donors direct over $500 million to the most effective charities. GiveWell never takes any fees, so all of your tax-deductible donations are given to the charity you choose. For me, that's how I found Give Directly, and particularly during the course of COVID, but there's been many, many other studies. If you give people in need money directly, they know how best to spend it in a most effective way for them. I mean, literally, our poverty rate went down when we had the stimulus. And in absence of that, Give Directly is what I do. People, they have they have many other charities that they've highlighted over there at GiveWell. You can check it out. But that's how I found Give Directly. I don't think it's related necessarily, those two. It just happens to be Give. And they actually are doing COVID relief for some folks in this country as well. You only have a few days left to make a tax-deductible donation before the new year. Go right now. And when you make your first donation to GiveWell, your gift will be matched up to $250. Just go to givewell.org/majority, pick podcast and Majority Report at checkout. So you pick podcast and Majority Report at checkout. This matching offer is good for as long as the funds last. Get your first donation matched up to $250 at givewell.org/majority and select podcast and Majority Report at checkout. Also, I think people know these days, tough to have a fun date night out. Tough always if you have kids to interact with them and get them to do stuff that you're excited for. Which is why we're glad we have Hunt a Killer. This program, one of us uses it as a way of interacting with his teenage daughter. That'd be me. Another one of us is using it as a date night. Hunt a Killer is a murder mystery game. Feels like an escape room in a box. What happens is they send you deliveries on a monthly basis. If you want, you can also speed it up. And they give you piles of documents. They give you evidence. They give you audio recordings, case files, pictures. You eliminate suspects. You identify murder weapons until you crack the case and you catch the killer. You'll learn about the backstory of each of the suspects. In fact, in this case that we have, it's a good opportunity for me to teach my daughter about history a little bit, in this country. And like I say, if you can't wait for the next box, they'll send it to you quickly. Matt, how is date night going with, and you're on the same case, right? The theater.
The Cadence Theater. Yeah, I just got my second box now. I actually am really enjoying it in a kind of childish kind of way. Like the documents they give you are very authentic looking, so you really feel like you're some kind of detective. I'm getting a kick out of it.
I love that. Like they look kind of old and
they do a good job of it.
Right.
Yeah.
They do a good job of it. Right now, just for our listeners, you can go to huntakiller.com/majority. Use promo code majority at checkout. You get 20% off your first box. Head to huntakiller.com/majority for 20% off. Show your support for our show and have some fun. That's huntakiller.com/majority. And lastly, this episode, and frankly, my breakfast, as I'm looking at that box right there, brought to you today by Magic Spoon. So you remember, breakfast cereal, one of the best things about being a kid. Sit down, you get all that sugary goodness, then you drink up the milk, and maybe it's a different color because you got your fruity or you got your chocolate. Of course, you can't eat that as an adult because it's full of sugar and junk. Well, fortunately, there is a way to relive that magic of your childhood cereal in a healthier way. Magic Spoon is a cereal company that's discovered a way to recreate your favorite childhood cereals with 0 grams of sugar, 11 grams of protein, and only 3 net grams of carbs in each serving. And so many of you have asked, apparently now you can finally build your very own custom variety box. It comes in a box, a shipment of 4. You can choose from best-selling cocoa, fruity, that's Saul's favorite, frosted, blueberry, plus brand new flavors, including peanut butter and cinnamon. Now, I don't know if this makes me a bad parent, but I bring the cinnamon here in the office.
I had some the other day.
It's good, right? And I just, Saul's happy with his fruity, but I'm not giving up the cinnamon. There's just no way. I will let them have the peanut butter. I'll let them try that one too. But the cinnamon is all for me. I know that's not, you probably shouldn't brag about that when you're doing that to your kids, but what are you going to do? It's keto friendly. It's gluten-free, grain-free, soy-free, low-carb, and GMO-free. Go to magicspoon.com/majority report. You can build your own custom variety box and give it a try today. If you use our code majority report at checkout, you will get free shipping. Magic Spoon's so confident in their product, it's backed with a 100% happiness guarantee. So if you don't like it for any reason, they're going to give you your money back. No questions asked. That's magicspoon.com/majority report. Use the code majority report for free shipping. We thank Magic Spoon for their sponsoring of this show. And frankly, also for me having a healthy breakfast. Same with my kids. All right. Let's welcome to the show. Do we have them? Mark Joseph Stern from Slate. Do we have him?
He's joining now.
Things have changed on the Supreme Court, I think, since we spoke last. Amy Coney Barrett, of course, is now a member. I think last time we spoke to Mark, she was just about to ascend to that position.
Ascend.
As it were.
Yes.
Do we have him?
He's in, but I'm not seeing his video or audio, unfortunately. Let's see here.
All right. We're just going to take give it a second. Bear with us, folks. Brendan, I have stopped the clock.
Yeah, I'm not sure what that...
All right. Well, we're working on Mark as we speak. The case that, of course, in front of Supreme Court over the past couple of days was the question as to whether the Trump administration can essentially come up with 2 different counts from the census. One count would be all the people in the United States at the time of the census, which of course
seems like it should be the point of the census.
Well, it is the constitutional mandate of
Yes.
the census, not how many citizens are in the country, how many people are in the country.
And go on. Sam.
It is, and this number is used to create apportionment for congressional seats. And what the Trump administration wants to do is to provide a second number. And that is a number of people who live within a district, let's say, minus some number that they have calculated of those people who are undocumented immigrants. And I think we have Mark now. No, we do not. And this issue was argued in front of the Supreme Court over the past couple of days. And in many respects, the issue itself as to whether one could do that, whether that's constitutional, was a second order question. The first order question was, is the case ripe at this time? Is there standing for those who are suing the Trump administration and trying to prevent them from breaking down these numbers in this way and using the non-actual number of people in the district number as a way of deciding this apportionment? Now, these census figures are not just about the question of congressional seats, but also in terms of resources that districts have. And I think we have them now. Mark Stern from Slate, welcome to the program.
Hi, sorry about the technical difficulties.
No worries. That is that is the age of COVID. So I was just giving a breakdown of the case, Trump versus New York, which is about the Trump administration's attempt to essentially create two different numbers from the census for the purposes of creating congressional districts. Why don't you take it from there, just to make sure that I've articulated it at least close?
Yeah, that's exactly right. The Trump administration is trying something that's never been done before in the history of the Republic, which is to create a set of census figures that excludes undocumented immigrants. And the plan is to use those figures when dividing up seats in the House of Representatives. So every 10 years after every census, there's a new apportionment of seats in the House. This year, it looks like Florida will gain a seat, New York will lose a seat. It matches population, right? Trump wants to exclude undocumented immigrants from that count. So states like California that have large immigrant communities, they could lose up to 3 seats in the House of Representatives, and by extension, 3 votes in the Electoral College, because that's how those votes are calculated. So the goal here is to shift representation away from immigrant-heavy blue states like California toward rural, whiter, more Republican states.
How does the Trump administration intend to calculate how many undocumented immigrants are in a district?
So it's a great question because, as you may remember, the Supreme Court blocked the citizenship question that was set to appear on the census. So there's no official count of immigrants, let alone undocumented immigrants in the United States, let alone in each state. So what the Trump administration is trying to do is use both state data and administrative records to match census responses to individuals that they suspect to be undocumented. It's super slapdash and slipshod. It is an untested method. And the administration has already admitted it's taking much longer than they expected. They're having a lot of trouble with it, they've said in court, because this is not a really reliable way to calculate these figures. The truth is they're probably going to end up taking a big guess and then trying to back up that guess with some scaffolding that's all BS.
Okay, so if I'm a Supreme Court justice, I'm looking at that with a certain amount of skepticism in terms of like, can you even effectively give me a number? Or are you just making this up? I mean, because what's to stop you from just saying like, oh, yeah, no, all of them seem to be in California and New York and nowhere else. That's the first. Well, I don't know if that's the first order problem. It seems to me the first order problem is just like the question of itself is like the census is a constitutionally mandated exercise And for these textualists and originalists, it says in very clear language that the census is supposed to count the people in the United States, not the citizens, just who is in the country at the time. And the census is supposed to be the basis for these congressional districts.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And that practice goes back to 1790, when a lot of the guys who actually wrote the Constitution also helped to conduct the first census and sent U.S. Marshals out to do it and said, count everyone, not just citizens. One way to think about this case is that the original formula here, of course, counted enslaved people as 3/5 of a person, right? That was the notorious 3/5 clause. Trump's plan is to count undocumented immigrants as 0/5 of a person, to say that they aren't persons at all. So not just restoring the 3/5 clause, but in some ways making it more egregious. And I think the originalists and the textualists have to look at that and look at the 14th Amendment, which undid the 3/5 clause and says, no, we have to count every person equally. You look at those words, the constitutional text, the historical practice here, and there is just no way to get to what Trump wants to do. What he is trying here goes against the Constitution, and you really have to adopt a pretty loose understanding of the English language to even argue that Trump is doing something legal.
So, I mean, how does this case even get in front of the Supreme Court? And then we'll get to the question of, I guess, standing and ripeness, that in some ways seems to be, well, I'll let you characterize what that's about. But how does this case even get to the Supreme Court? It seems to be like one of those things where, if I was in charge of granting certification for this case, I would have just said, like, are you kidding me?
Well, a lot of us, myself included, were hoping for that. Specifically, we were hoping that the court would just say, without holding arguments, yes, this is unconstitutional, which is a power that the court has. And it has done so in other cases involving, say, campaign finance regulations. But here, the court apparently could not come to an agreement behind the scenes. And so it decided to hold oral arguments and treat this kind of like a normal case. It had expedited briefing. And that made me worried. It made a lot of us worried that the justices might go along with what Trump wanted. Thankfully, I no longer think that's necessarily true. It seems like the conservative justices are skeptical that what Trump's trying to do here is unconstitutional. They seem to think this goes against all history and all constitutional text. But they are also looking, I think, for a way out of this case, a way to avoid deciding this case on the merits. And during oral arguments yesterday, we heard a lot of talk about ways to just duck this, to punt it, to kick the can down the road, and to hope that Joe Biden comes into office and just sort of takes this case off the Supreme Court's plate.
Okay, and now I understand why, like the mechanism in which they're going to punt this is by saying, hey, there's two concepts, I guess, that Kavanaugh was sort of expressing during the oral arguments. One is, you are talking about a hypothetical harm because you don't know what the number the Trump administration is going to come up with as to how many undocumented immigrants are in the country. So you can't really tell if it's actually going to change anything in terms of apportionment at this point. So you're talking about a hypothetical harm. You need to come back. This is a concept. You need to come back to the court when there's an actual harm. And I guess more or less on the same level is the concept of ripeness, that nothing has happened enough to get to that point where you can even assess the harm. And so that's how they would punt it. But why would they punt it as opposed to just sort of saying, like, yeah, this isn't going to happen? Like, they're thinking down the road, there may be some other doctrines that we may loosen in some way that would allow something like this to happen? I mean, what's behind that?
Yeah, so my fear is that the conservative justices, specifically Kavanaugh and Alito, were on this trail that you just described. They seem to be looking for a way to signal that, hey, the Trump administration can't do this, not a categorical exclusion of undocumented immigrants, but it could find a subset of undocumented immigrants and exclude those instead. And so there's two consequences to that. Number one, they suggested maybe that's legal. And number two, they suggested maybe it's a small enough number that, as you said, no state's actually going to lose any seats in the House. So the case doesn't really matter. Nobody even has standing here. I think both of those are really dishonest ways of looking at this case. I mean, first of all, if you take everyone in ICE detention right now and exclude them, which is something that Trump is apparently considering, that is still a lot of people who are persons who reside in the United States. I mean, 57% of people who are detained by ICE today will be released back into the country at some point in the future. To say those people don't count, that is still really bad and unconstitutional. But number two, this idea that it's, nobody has standing to challenge the case if an apportionment seat isn't lost or gained or whatever, that's a harm, but it's not the only harm going on here. You also have Trump defying 200 plus years of historical practice, meddling with this census power that's supposed to be Congress's authority here, and messing up the numbers that states are going to receive when they start drawing their own district lines. This has such ripple effects over the next few months and over the next 10 years, really, that for the court to kick the can down the road, I think there's no way for them to do that without creating a mess in the process.
And we should also say, in the case of the ICE detentions, I mean, aside from sort of it being repugnant to say they're not people, if you have an ICE detention facility, that is going to implicate what you need in terms of resources in that district. And presumably some of that money is coming from the feds, and that's going to affect, like, I don't know, what if there's a federal emergency and you're going to have all those people to,
and what about due process for those in detention? I mean, you can't just strip them of their representation in Congress because they're in the detention facility.
Right. I mean, there's a whole host of issues, right? Centered around that one. And in the other instance, couldn't there also be an argument that you are affecting the actual functioning of the census by even raising this possibility where we're going to use the data that we get from the census to isolate individuals in a certain district? I mean, that seems contrary to what the court has held in the past in terms of like census takers and the idea that we're trying to count everybody and nothing should interfere with that process.
Right, exactly. And so that's one of two ways to look at the harms here. And I think there's a real divide on the court, because I totally agree with you. Simply beginning this process of cordoning off a certain group of people and telling them you're not represented, you don't count, that seems to be really problematic and something that the court should stop. But the conservative justices were suggesting, well, we're not going to get involved with that because that's just the government doing its thing. If Wilbur Ross sends Donald Trump a piece of paper that has these calculations that excludes these immigrants, that's not our problem. It only becomes our problem when the seats are explicitly apportioned between the states. And that just seems dangerously wrong to me, because at that point, and even Chief Justice Roberts said this, but he's not as important anymore. He said, how do you unscramble the eggs? Once this data is out there in the world, and once Trump has it and he's transmitting it to Congress, how do the courts unscramble the eggs? It seems like the damage is kind of already being done. But again, you saw Kavanaugh and Alito saying, no, let's just hold off, wait and see, and we'll deal with it afterwards.
So when does the court rule on this? Because this seems like something, if you're going to enjoin them, right? I mean, that's what the plaintiffs seek to do, is enjoin this sort of can of worms being opened, because you can't shove the genie back into the can of worms, I guess, to the metaphors. When do they rule on this?
Yeah, so, they don't have a deadline, but there are a few good deadlines for the government that I think the court is aware of. So in theory, Trump is supposed to get this data on December 31st, but the government's already said they're not going to be able to meet that deadline. That's a big problem, because Congress is supposed to take a look at this data by January 10th and begin the apportionment process no later than that. And yet we have the Census Bureau now saying that it won't have the information ready until January 26th, which, as you may recall, will be when Trump is no longer president. So I think there is a chance that the Supreme Court sits on this case and watches what happens, watches the Trump administration blow past each of these deadlines, and then just, if they can, hold out until Joe Biden takes office. Joe Biden will come in and do something to try to undo all of this mess. And then the court will say, we can't deal with this case anymore because everything has changed. We're sending it back down to the lower courts.
What a weird way to approach this, rather than just refusing to take the case in the first place. If that's what they do, if they basically just wait until the case goes stale, essentially, when Biden comes in.
They're being political, and they are they pretend to be apolitical.
Why would they? Why take that tack? Just because there's something that they want to have another bite at in the future?
Well, so the court has actually mandatory jurisdiction over these cases, which means that it cannot simply ignore them. It has to do something with these cases because they're challenging apportionment and redistricting. There's this special rule. Now, that doesn't mean that the court has to take the case and hear arguments and issue a decision on the merits. It just means that the court has to do something to deal with the case, right? And so, I think that what the court obviously should have done is simply upheld the lower court's injunctions and said, okay, look, the lower courts have enjoined this. It's obviously unconstitutional, so we're never going to scramble the eggs in the first place. But instead, they took it up. They held it on an expedited schedule, which is something the court rarely does, gave the government everything it asked for in this scheduling, said, okay, we'll rush all of this. And then the government comes into the court and says, we actually have no idea when any of this is going to happen. So very messy.
Mark Joseph Stern, thanks so much for your time today. Really appreciate it.
Always a pleasure. Thanks so much, Sam.
All right, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, Rachel Cohen and Marcia Brown from the American Prospect working with The Intercept on how Democrats can deal with this conservative court. We'll be right back in just a moment. Okay, we're back. Joining us from the American Prospect and also, I think, from the Intercept, Rachel Cohen, Marcia Brown. Welcome to you both. You guys have written an incredible piece in the Prospect with the help of the Intercept on that question of how Democrats can deal with a court that seems to be hostile to just about everything that I think a lot of Americans take for granted that the government can do and take for granted in terms of like laws that have already been passed. Rachel, let's start with you. You cite the example of Lilly Ledbetter. Just quickly tell us that story so that we get a sense of the concept here.
Yeah, so Lilly Ledbetter, and thank you for having us. The Lilly Ledbetter Fair Pay Act, which maybe people listening to the show might remember, was the first law that Barack Obama.
We're having problems with your internet for some reason. I think we're having trouble with connection. Marcia, are you there?
Yeah, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, we can. Let's Marcia, why don't you answer that question for us and we can see what's going on with
I'll try to switch into my phone and you can go.
Okay.
Sure. So yeah, thank you very much for having us. So the Lilly Ledbetter Fair Pay Act, which passed in 2009, was the first piece of legislation that President Obama signed. And it was actually a response to a Supreme Court decision, which Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg wrote in her dissent was very parsimonious and was really kind of nitpicky. And in her dissent, she said, the ball is in Congress's court. And so she actually called on Congress to clarify the language in the statute because effectively, the court had said that, okay, yeah, there might be some pay discrimination here, but your statute of limitations has expired because the clock began counting when you were hired, not when you first realized you were experiencing pay discrimination. And so Congress updated the statute of limitations, and that was all it took for that to essentially nullify that Supreme Court decision.
Okay, and you guys have outlined a whole multiple silos, essentially, where there are some key rulings that Congress could overturn. Part of this is really incumbent upon what happens in Georgia, although you do cite a couple of places where you have bipartisan, I guess, opportunities. And Rachel, why don't we start with you on that? What are those bipartisan opportunities? What areas and what specific laws do you think that we can look to perhaps a gang of four again, or a gang of eight, dealing with Supreme Court rulings?
Yeah, well, I can answer it, and then I'm actually going to let Marcia speak a little more specifically to antitrust, because that is one of the areas, and she wrote about that specifically. But I think you're right. Obviously, our judicial overrides will be easier if Democrats reclaim the Senate, and we think that this is something that the party should be making more clear to voters in terms of laying out what's at stake. It's not just Supreme Court nominations, it's actually the ability to override bad Supreme Court rulings too, in this upcoming runoff. But we do also think that even if they don't win, there is still opportunity to overturn bad decisions, and there are different legislative ways people get individual things through. But historically, there have been judicial overrides, bipartisan judicial overrides in civil rights. In 2008, there were a bunch of overrides passed to the Americans with Disabilities Act. So that was bipartisan. We have had times in the past where voting rights and civil rights were more bipartisan. And we think antitrust is another area that could be a possible area for compromise. Marcia might want to speak more to that, though.
Yeah, Marcia, tell us about antitrust, because I have to say that I am a little skeptical about the prospect of bipartisanship. 2008, in human terms, was not that long ago. In terms of where the parties, particularly the Republican Party, has gone, it seems like a half a century ago. But tell us about antitrust.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, in 2009, Democrats had the House and the Senate, so it was a different time. But I think what is important to think about with antitrust is that there's the Democratic majority in the House Subcommittee on Antitrust came out with a 400-page report where they actually identified, I think, over half a dozen Supreme Court cases that would be important to overturn to strengthen antitrust law. And Ken Buck, a Republican on the committee, released a response called The Third Way. I think he called it The Third Way for reform, where he actually identified some areas where he thought there would be some bipartisan agreement. One of those cases was Ohio versus Amex, where there might be some room, American Express, where there might be some room for collaboration on that. And just to add to what Rachel was saying, these overrides can be passed as legislative riders, so you can attach them to sort of unrelated bills in the House and the Senate. So there are ways to do it without passing it as comprehensive legislation, but a number of the overrides that we've identified are actually included in several current pieces of legislation that are more comprehensive that have already passed the House, and some that haven't passed but have been proposed. So there are different ways to pass them, but like legislation, you do need to have some excitement, some push behind it.
I want to get to some of the other silos, but and I don't know which one of you knows the history best about this, but why do you think this changed? I mean, you write that during the 70s and the 80s, even into the mid 90s, Congress would, and we should say, up until that time, the House was dominated by Democrats. I mean, and so there was never any question of the Democrats not controlling the House at that time. Occasionally, you would get the Senate. What changed in terms of the disposition of legislatures and their relationship to the court?
Yeah, well, so there are legal scholars who have been sort of trying to figure this out. And we talk about some factors. There's not like one clear answer, but it's sort of a number of things were going on. So some legal scholars say it's just that Congress got more partisan, more polarized. And I think people agree that's obviously played one factor, but it doesn't really explain everything, because Congress was pretty partisan and polarized in the 90s when they still passed a bunch of judicial overrides. So, and another factor people cite is that the decline in overrides also, there has been a decline in congressional staff. So when you have less capacity in Congress on committees to be doing this kind of research, a lot of Congress members just sort of outsource things to outside advocacy groups now. As they lost their own internal capacity, that could have been a factor. But we also make an argument about Democrats specifically, which is just like there has been a mindset, there has been sort of a relative inertia about treating Supreme Court cases as like the end of the road, the final step there. Like, and we see that in just the way the reaction to our piece has sort of showed this. Like most people, this hasn't been a way of thinking about bad decisions. It has on the right, and conservatives like often talk about this, but on the progressive liberal side, if the Supreme Court weighs in, the response from a lot of liberal lawmakers and progressive advocacy groups has been to sort of be really upset and frustrated, but not talk about, well, how can we now mobilize and organize a law to override it? And so we're sort of making the case that this tool was used by Democrats for decades, and we can use it again. And for some, we need to get back in the mindset of recognizing that this is a legal and important way that to represent the separation of powers and for Congress to exert its legal authority. So we're sort of trying, I don't know exactly why they dropped that mindset, but they did. And so we're sort of trying to say, like, we need to pick that back up again.
It seems like it's consistent with a general lack of, I guess, exertion of will by Democrats that we have seen. There is a temerity that has existed since that era. And frankly, we have the leadership we still have today in the Democratic Party. They all came in during that era. Right. And when so I suspect that that's not a coincidence. Let's talk about reproductive rights, Marcia. What is your sense of what the court can do there? And like I say, folks should really check out the piece, because there's you have a whole slew of these silos of law which they can be changed. But let's just start with reproductive rights. What can the court do to strengthen reproductive rights in this country? The Congress can do.
Rachel wrote about reproductive rights, so I'd want to pass the microphone to her for that.
All right, Rachel, tell us, please.
Sure. So, one thing that I say in the piece about reproductive rights is there's a lot of political momentum that if Democrats reclaim power, what they really have been talking about for a long time is overturning the Hyde Amendment, which is the law that bans any federal funding going to pay for abortions. And so this is not to detract from that. It's just to, to put out that there is more that a, active, proactive Congress could do. And so one of them, the case that we talk about, you may recall the 2014 Supreme Court case, the Hobby Lobby case. And that centered around a law from 1993 called the religious
RFRA.
RFRA, yeah, RFRA,
yes,
Religious Freedom Restoration Act.
Yes.
And so basically, civil rights groups, advocates, religious freedom groups felt, argued that RFRA was being manipulated and distorted from its original intent in that Hobby Lobby case as a way to deny people from access to contraceptive services. And what Congress could do to not only address that case, but future attempts to use RFRA in negative ways, because it is also being used to deny non-Christian parents adoption. It's being used to deny transgender patients rights, like it's sort of being used in a host of different ways. And there is a bill in Congress right now called the Do No Harm Act that was introduced last year. And it would basically tweak and clarify the RFRA statute to basically preempt any future lawsuits of that kind if it would prevent harm to a third party. So it's sort of a sweeping way to get at all the different sorts of ways that RFRA could currently be used to deny reproductive healthcare to or other services to people on basis of religious, things.
Marcia, did you work on the environmental law?
Yeah.
Okay, let's talk about that, because one of the things that I know there's a concern about is that this court in particular is going to deal with things like the Chevron doctrine and the idea of the delegatory power of Congress. In other words, for folks who, and I'm disappointed if my audience isn't fully aware of both those doctrines, but the idea essentially that the courts and Congress can delegate to, let's say, the EPA, you figure out what constitutes clean water and you do the steps that are necessary to make sure that we have clean water. We're just going to say, pass a law, we want clean water. And courts generally would defer also to the EPA. How can they deal with in what you write about in terms of what Congress can do to fix those things? What can Congress do to sort of inoculate some of these protections from a court that is determined to revisit Chevron and this delegation authority that Congress has?
Yeah, I'm really glad you bring that up. The Chevron doctrine is really critical, both when it comes to environmental law, but also in other areas of the law, because it is about deferring to an agency's interpretation of the law. And so where we've seen that in the environment is where the EPA kind of interprets the law kind of expansively to include greenhouse gases as an air pollution, and therefore they can regulate that. And so there have been several cases where this has come up, and the EPA has said, okay, we're going to regulate emissions because of greenhouse gases because they're considered an air pollution, and then the court will kind of temper that. And I think what's really important to think about when it comes to this area of the law, but also to the larger thesis of our piece, is that this is a way for Congress to take back power. And from the court, where we always kind of think of, the liberal activist justices, but actually a lot of conservative justices are pretty activist when it comes to something that might have been considered settled law, like the Chevron doctrine, that they're now kind of bringing back up and thinking about like, well, actually, how are we going to reinterpret this? And so there is some worry there. And I think a lot of environmental scholars are also worried that if Congress takes up any kind of comprehensive environmental reform, that it could actually come out more watered down than it is now. So despite the fact that Congress and the agencies are working with statutes, some of which are 40 years old, passed during the Nixon administration, some of them have been updated, but not very many. The EPA has actually been able to kind of stretch those statutes through the Chevron doctrine. So it's going to be really key for the Chevron doctrine to really maintain its strength so that the existing statutes can be used. But some scholars do think that there is areas to tweak around the edges, and even if there isn't comprehensive legislation where that could open a can of worms, these kind of statutory overrides would be an option for Congress to clarify the language. So the Clean Water Act is a really big one. Actually, what happened with the Atlantic Coast Pipeline this year, that was also one where they could just clarify the statute, and then the pipeline wouldn't have been able to get a permit to cross the Appalachian Trail twice. And there's also ones where different agencies offer different permits, but sometimes the kind of pollution doesn't fall into either of those permits. And so then the corporation will argue, well, we don't really need any kind of permit regulation. We can just do this. Or if we have one, we're fine. And the court kind of says, oh, okay. So there are ways to clarify that and strengthen some of our environmental protections through these overrides.
This may be outside of your portfolio, but is there a way for Congress to protect something like the Chevron doctrine? Is there a way for Congress to protect its ability to delegate authority, or are these constitutional questions that Congress can't really mend?
That's a good question. I would say that that's probably a little outside of my expertise. I would ask a legal scholar that question. But I would say that, and this is something we bring up in the piece, these statutory overrides are a way for Congress to directly intervene, for a Congress to take back power, to clarify the statute, update the law, which is really a classic thing to do. I mean, the environment changes, the pollution changes, and so Congress needs to update the statute. That's just that should be considered regular lawmaking. But conservatives have never shied away from, oh, I don't really like this court decision, and so we're going to fight back against this. And the Roe v. Wade 40-year battle has been a great example of that, where it was a constitutional decision. Congress couldn't really act on that, but conservatives could have this grassroots movement where they cut back and tempered that decision. So it would be great for liberals to take up a cause that they think is really important. I think Citizens United is a really great example of this, where it's a constitutional decision. Congress can't overturn the decision or nullify the decision, but Congress can write laws that temper the force of it.
Right. We see conservatives do this, like you say, on the question of choice, where we have states across the country where a woman's ability to have an abortion is effectively gone. And these introductions of these so-called trap laws are also equally problematic. Rachel Cohen, Marcia Brown, the piece is in the American Prospect, How to Counteract the Court. It was done in partnership with The Intercept. Thanks so much for your time today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, folks, we will wrap it up here and we will be back tomorrow. But there is a theme, Emma, that we have seen over the past really 30 years, close to, in Congress. Broadly speaking, regardless of who has controlled Congress, or House in particular, there has been a ceding of power to certainly to the presidency and the executive, but also to the courts. And it is really going to be a question to see how aggressive the Democrats are going to be in the House, whether they have the Senate or not. I guess we will have to wait and see.
Well, I mean, they certainly have no choice, in my view. Not that that's ever stopped them from doing the cowardly thing before, but the fact that McConnell and the Republicans have done this naked power grab when it comes to the courts, and not just the Supreme Court, lower courts as well, that means that Democrats do have to be proactive in mitigating some of the harm, because they've already indicated they're going to block Biden's judicial appointments. McConnell has decided the way to cement his legacy and corporate power in this country and wealthy hegemony is by stacking the courts with conservative judges that block all progressive ideas, priorities, and ensure the subjugation of people. So.
All right. Well, we will talk more about this in the coming weeks and months until tomorrow. And for those of you sticking around, we will be heading into the fun half. Nomi will be joining us. I think if we get our technical issues resolved, quite a challenge today. Folks, just a reminder, you can support this program by becoming a member. Become a member at jointhemajorityreport.com. And when you do, you not only get the free show, without without commercials, but you also get the fun half where we get extra content. So jointhemajorityreport.com. Also, it's getting to be that season. Now is the time to get your Hanukkah gifts or your Christmas gifts, your Kwanzaa gifts, or
Hanukkah's right around the corner.
Whatever you're going to celebrate.
Yeah.
And the place to do that, of course, is at shop.majorityreportradio.com. We're coming out with new beanies, right, Brendan?
Yeah, I didn't know we were dropping that today, but yeah, they are
I'm
in the works.
An image of it, but we're gonna do it.
Oh yeah,
but people should check it out right now. Maybe we should drop those babies up on the site, because we only have 24 shopping days left, or whatever.
Right.
Whatever the advent calendar is.
You can't buy anything at all after that.
No, you're gonna want them. Winter starting. Hey, folks, Hunt a Killer is a murder mystery subscription box where you'll sift through piles of documents, evidence, audio recordings, and more. You'll eliminate suspects. You identify murder weapons until you crack the case and catch the killer. Hunt a Killer has over 2,000 5-star reviews. It's no wonder why people love them so much. Go to huntakiller.com/majority. Use the promo code majority at checkout for 20% off your first box. Check it out. Nomi. Do we have Nomi?
She's not in yet. No.
All right. Well, in the meantime, check out the Antifada. You can go to patreon.com/the Antifada for what Jamie's got cooking this week. Matt?
Yeah, last night on the brand spanking new Left Reckoning YouTube page, and here's the logo. I have it ready this time. There it is. Boom.
Wow. All right, what's going on here? Now, so there's a little bit of like, obviously, this is a tip of the hat to the fact that you're from North Dakota.
Well, no. In fact, this is a Texas landscape.
I was also going to say Griscom is from Texas. Yeah. So, I mean, that's the reckoning part, right? It's not just Texas.
I mean, there's the there's the star.
And there's the star from Texas.
Mm-hmm.
And what is
all Texas?
What is that? What is the like the banner, like that stuff? That seems reminiscent of something.
Oh, you think so? I don't know. I just think I couldn't tell you. To be honest. I didn't make
a little bit disappointed because I thought there was going to be a lot more behind that. I thought there was going to be a lineage.
It's the banner that Stephen F. Austin. No, I don't know. I have no idea.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that was. I mean, I like the logo, but I just thought that there was going to be like some lineage there. Like we borrowed that from the. Okay. All right. Never mind.
No, I mean we kind of loosely were inspired by Texas area sports logos. I think is the
wow. Okay.
So yeah, but we did a think tank last night. David and I. We talked about a few things. I can't really remember what. We talked about near Tandon quite a bit, so check that out.
It's called Think Tank.
What was that?
Apt.
Oh yeah, exactly.
Think Tank.
Well, I guess we're going to talk about this with Nomi about near Tandon, but there's there really appears, at least in the event that Democrats don't win in Georgia, that the Republicans are sort of focusing on near Tandon to sink her nomination,
which is what made the appointment so stupid.
It's also funny to me that they're trying to sink it over her posting, which is like, that's a criticism we do have of her, but that's not really the criticism.
Trump's your president. You want to make it about posting?
I mean, I think I don't know. I'm curious. We can bandy around the different theories. We still don't have Nomi yet, right?
No, we don't.
Okay. Well, then, folks, 3 p.m. today, check out the Nomi Key Show on YouTube, youtube.com/the Nomi Key Show. You can, I'm not sure who's going to be on her show today, but always worth checking out at 3 p.m. We're going to take a quick break, head into the fun half. 646-257-3920 is the number. 646-257-3920 is the number. We're going to try and take some phone calls. We're not going to have time for too many, but we'll try and take some, and we'll take your IMs. You can pick up the app at majorityapp.com. Be right back. Left is best. Jamie and I may have a disagreement.
Yeah, you can't just say whatever you want about people just because you're rich.
I have an absolute right to mock them on YouTube.
He's up there buggy whipping like he's the boss.
I am not your employer.
I'm tired of the negativity.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to upset you. You're nervous? You're a little bit upset? You're riled up?
Yeah, maybe you should rethink your defense of that, you fucking idiots.
We're just going to get rid of you.
All right.
But dude. You want to smoke this joint?
Yes.
Do you feel like you are a dinosaur?
Some good shit.
Exactly. I'm happy now.
It's a win-win.
It's a win-win-win.
Oh, hell yeah.
Now listen to me. 2, 3, 4, 5 times. 847-906-501-457. 2, 38, 56, 27. 1/2. 5 8s. 3.9 billion.
Wow.
He's the ultimate math nerd.
Don't you see?
Why don't you get a real job instead of spewing vitriol and hatred, you left-wing Limbaugh?
Everybody's taking their dumb juice today.
Come on, Sammy.
Dance.
Ooh.
my first post-coital scene with a woman. I'm hoping to add more moves to my repertoire. All I have is the dip and the swirl.
Fine, we can double dip.
Yes, this is a perfect moment.
No.
Wait, what?
You make under $1 million a year. You're scum. You're nothing.
Excuse me? Fuck you, you fucking liberal elite. I think you belong in jail.
Thank you for saying that, Sam. You're a horrible, despicable person.
All right, gonna take a quick break. I want to take a moment to talk to some of the libertarians out there. Take whatever vehicle you want to drive to the library. What you're talking about is jibber jabber.
Classic. I'm feeling more chill already.
Good. Donald Trump can kiss all of our asses.
Hey, Sam. Hey, Andy. You guys ready to do some evil?
Hitler was such an idiot.
That guy might be a Nazi.
Agreed.
No.
Death to America.
You.
Yes.
Wow.
Wow, that's weird. No way. Unbelievable. This guy's got a really good hook.
Throw our hands up.
Ooh. Wow.
But Sam, I gotta get off.
No worries. Let's. I want to just flesh this out a little bit. I mean, look, it's a free speech issue. If you don't like me,
Hey! Shut up!
Thank you for calling into the Majority Report. Sam will be with you shortly.
We are back, ladies and gentlemen. All sorts of technical issues today.
I know. I don't get what's going on.
I meanwhile, Nomi can't connect from her internet. I have this problem on my keyboard where I can't hit delete. It won't do anything. And also my escape key doesn't work.
Did you spill something on there?
No.
I hate it. I hate technology. I hate it so
I'm done
much.
with this. I'm done with it. I don't know what I'm going to do here. I can't do the slightest technological or technical problems, and it just drives me crazy.
Yeah, I get it.
I'm having. Hopefully, I've just called in to the system. We shall see. I don't know.
Aren't we all in the system, man?
Calling from a 308 area code. Let's see if I'm there. 308. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hey, Sam. It's Kowalski from Nebraska.
Kowalski from Nebraska. This is the first thing that's gone right today. What's on your mind?
Well, I usually make everyone's day brighter, but I had a rather complicated question, and I wanted to get some feedback on it.
Okay.
So I've been doing some research into climate change solutions, proposals, and all the sort, and I came to do you think it would be wise to explain to people who are not really all that familiar with climate change to talk about how there are solutions that can save the climate but kind of screw the ecology? Because basically there are things you can do that can fix essentially the carbon concentration that would still result in, the Amazon getting destroyed and all the animals getting wiped out. I can see that going either way in the conversation because, we obviously don't want to lose all the animals and, our wildlife, but, those are going to be the cheapest solutions. So, what is your take on, the nuances of that conversation?
I'm not sure as to what I'm not sure how did you get to that conversation? I'm not, I don't understand the context in which explaining some ways that you can essentially balance the carbon equation. You can do a few things that in a capitalist mindset, there are things you could do right now with the current agricultural system that could make sequestering carbon a profitable industry if it was propped up with a government tax, but it would do absolutely nothing to ensure better water quality. It would do nothing to ensure that there would be diverse wildlife but it wouldn't necessarily harm those things, would it?
It could. basically there are things you could do that would still promote monoculture, and it would basically, it's using what we have now with all the systems in place of our liberal hellscape to basically making sure that the climate will be good for humans, but the environment would basically just be ours to do with as we please.
Well, I mean, I don't know in practice if you have to make that trade-off, but if you're saying from a rhetorical standpoint, I mean, climate change, it seems to me, is a first order problem, right? And, that's the one that I would address first in this environment, frankly.
So preserving forests and wildlife would be a secondary thing, get there when you get more people on board, or?
Yeah. I mean, if you cannot compel people to save our civilization, right? I mean, this is the thing, is that the earth is not going to burn up. What I do think is going to happen is that we could lose hundreds of millions, if not billions of people over the course of 100 years because of climate change making large parts of the world uninhabitable. And I think if you got to deal with that first, that seems to me to be the first order emergency. Now, I don't know if I necessarily, accept that in practice, you can't do both simultaneously.
Oh, no. You can do both simultaneously. It's just they're a little more complicated to explain.
Yeah,
so
no, rhetorically,
what I'm getting
dude, have you looked around? You know where you live. You worried about the nuance in these conversations? Well. Yeah, look, no. I mean, I think the idea is that, to the extent that you have to talk about solutions, right? It is really just to further the acceptance of certain reality that's taking place. And so from a rhetorical standpoint, I would say, yes, I would maybe, not feel so compelled to deliver the nuance. That's for the, you're trying to introduce things into a survey course that I think are just not, your students are not ready for.
All right, that makes sense. I'm trying to work on some scripts right now when I get this channel thing going, and I always get into this this thing leads to X, which leads to Y, which leads to Z, and you just keep going and going.
Yeah,
and going. You don't know when to stop. So.
Yeah, no, you need to stop. I mean, if you feel that compulsion, and I understand that, right? I understand that feeling. Believe me, the best way to deal with that is to do some of your content as survey course, and then self-consciously say, I'm saving the sort of more nuanced stuff for, other, level 2, level 3 course or whatever it is. I mean, that way, at the very least for yourself, you will allow yourself the license to communicate the sort of the basic principles. I mean, this is a problem with any creation of content, whether it's, what you're talking about, or I don't know, even writing a script, or a book for that matter. There is a compulsion to put everything in there, and you got to fight that compulsion, even if you are cutting corners that doesn't tell you the whole story. Appreciate the call, Kowalski. Good luck with it.
Can I give you one little tidbit of positive news? I told my dentist the other day, and all COVID procedures were taken there, so don't worry about that. But they really enjoyed your take on the post office. They had never heard of your show before, showed it to them, and they really liked it. So you may have a couple new viewers from Nebraska. But
awesome.
I'll leave it at that. And everyone have a good, yep. Oh, yeah, Emma, hi.
Thanks, Kowalski.
Yeah, I think you're a really good addition to the show.
Thank you so much.
Later, maybe.
All right, there you go.
Appreciate it.
And speaking of addition to the show, do we have Nomi?
Hi. Sorry.
Hi. It's been one of those days.
Oh, the Wi-Fi gods is, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't really buy this stuff, and by really I mean I don't at all. But is Mercury actually in retrograde?
I
feel like anytime there's a problem, it is.
That's
the crystals around me right now.
That's the easy answer. That's the easy answer.
Right. Well, I'm just gonna believe it, even if there's.
All right, let's get right into this, okay, Nomi. Let's the near attendant thing, right? To me, it's a really curious appointment. I mean, I should also say, like, look, I think there are worse people to have at OMB. I know we had this argument last week on some level.
And I think we kind of had it yesterday too, because I think there's maybe like one worst person at OMB. I mean, she's pretty like outside of being repugnant on Twitter and just kind of to other people seemingly in real life, she's also fairly sympathetic to austerity, and like I think more than, and the fact that she fairly sympathetic to austerity, I put on the spectrum is I put on the spectrum. I mean, I think frankly, I don't get the sense Medicare, Medicaid. Yeah, I don't get the sense that really she is driven by any of that other than what she was told at any given point. I just don't get the sense that she is someone who she's not someone who has been steeped in like think tanks that are dedicated to that prospect, it's
like a Bruce Reed, right? That's what I'm saying.
But again, like that's the floor. I just think when we're just like we liked Yellen genuinely as a pick, right? As
also pro austerity,
but
I think
has evolved on that issue and is now way more in favor of downplaying the inflation debate. Yellen is like in the scope of Biden, a good pick. I don't think Tandon in the scope of Biden and what's available and what he would actually realistically do is a good pick.
I don't think she's getting confirmed, so it doesn't even matter. It's all
right. So this is
but now, so let me ask you this: do you think that she was just put up there as chum, as a way of allowing someone who is to the right of her on these issues to get in?
I don't know if it's about that. Possibly. I think, she's not like beloved in the establishment world. I don't think I'm going out of everyone hates her. Like there's like all sides have had gripes and interactions with Neera Tanden. So, and it doesn't seem to be like the Ron Klain Biden kind of persona of, okay, well, we're not going to go as aggressive as the Clintons did. We're going to pick folks that might be ideologically like line up with them. Sure. But personality wise are not, she's a Clintonian person. Like Neera Tanden. Yes, she worked with the Obama administration, but she's pure Clintonian. Right. I think.
Tell me about it. I tweeted out something. I mean, this is. I gotta say, like, look, I don't. If there are anybody who has like a thicker skin about this stuff than me, I don't know who it is. I'm more interested in it as a sort of phenomenon. Mm-hmm. I tweeted out something that I thought was, fairly, it wasn't a friendly tweet, but it was something like I said, something to the effect of like, I looked up how many tweets that Donald Trump has done in the 10 years that he's been on or something. And I compared it to Neera Tanden. Neera Tanden, like double the amount, and really
82,700 in the last 10 years, not including what's been deleted in the last 48 hours.
Thousands that have been deleted. But my point was just like, to the extent, and listen, you could ask 80 to 90% of the people who voted for Bernie Sanders, do you know who Neera Tanden is? And they would say, what? Who? No, honestly, I think like
Jordy, sure. I don't think
people like us who are on Twitter, which is really a small amount of people in the great scheme of things, which is not to say that I don't think Twitter is important in terms of driving the narrative, but in terms of just like knowing who Neera Tanden is, not many people, but I know her primarily as the person at CAP who was trying to quash anybody who was to the left of the Clintons or criticizing the Democrats whatsoever at CAP. To the person who basically it ran adrift despite the huge amounts of resources that they had. It sort of ran into an iceberg, and during that entire time the thing ran into an iceberg, she's out there being online in a way that I have criticized, people whose politics I like.
Well, it's unhinged.
For doing the same thing.
Okay, but like in addition to all of these things, she was central to the racist attack on Obama in the Clinton campaign in 2008. She was a huge part of that campaign. She was in favor of privatizing parts of Medicare and Medicaid and cutting back on Social Security with
as a spokesperson for the Obama.
Let's be very clear, eliminating Social Security, which is effing batshit.
Wait, she eliminating Social?
Oh yeah, there are tweets. I mean, go find them. They're amazing. She's been all over the place on these issues.
The point is, my point is,
she is still terrible. Not just a bad person.
But my tweet was really just about like how online she was. That's it. Which I think is like one of the least controversial things you could ever say. And I had a lot of her followers with like big numbers going at me with the Mike Cernovich attack.
Hysterical.
About the tweet that I did about Roman Polanski and the satirical claim that if I was at a time when Roman Polanski, people were trying to essentially allow him to be readmitted into the country and win a Lifetime Achievement Award, because
what did he do? No, I mean, but for those folks who don't know,
down after having pled guilty to statutory rape of a 13-year-old, 14-year-old girl who he had drugged, he skipped the country when he was supposed to get sentenced because he was afraid that the deal that he had with the judge was going to reject it because the judge was so. Found the whole thing so grotesque. And so he has been in exile for all that time, and people wanted to bring him back. There were people I knew who had signed this petition in Hollywood. And so I wrote a tweet that said, I don't care about Roman Polanski, but if my daughter's ever raped, I hope it's by someone who's much older and has a great sense of mise en scène, which is,
hilarious.
Well, I mean, putting aside how funny it is, which I think it is pretty funny. I think it's a good piece of satire. It's quite obvious that one doesn't get to choose who is a rapist and not. And if one did, that the idea that this person would have a great sense of mise en scène, which is not something that I think most people say in any context, would be it. So it's quite clearly a satirical piece. And there were multitude of people who deployed that in the same way that Mike Cernovich did. Now,
This is your modus operandi. She used this think tank, which gets hundreds of millions of dollars a year, much of it's from foreign governments, to not only become a tool to influence those Democrats or anybody who appears to be progressive in not touching foreign policy. If you look at the line of people who show up at the CAP conferences, Bernie Sanders doesn't go, everybody else has showed up, and they all voted for that foreign policy. I mean, basically their entire military budget.
Netanyahu talking about that, like looking at who comes to CAP and things like that. I mean, independent of who she's.
Wait.
Sorry,
So aside from the fact that they do the foreign policy side, it's also just a effing front group to annihilate the left. Are we kidding? She used this money. I mean, nobody has time to send 87,500 tweets in 10 years. Like literally, were you working? Oh, I get it. You organized troll armies, Reddit pages. You had a network of surrogates, legitimate surrogates, and people who just became surrogates because you have made them famous online by amplifying their messages. People like Sally Albright and Joyanne Reid, who are reinforcing verifiably false things. When we were on the Unity Reformer Commission, I tweeted this out. Okay, personally, I know you just went through this, Sam. It can be funny at times, and sometimes it can be very dangerous. And so, let's just be very clear. We can sit here and be emotionless beings, but if it actually starts to, be a danger to you, on the Unity Reform Commission, we were getting hundreds of tweets a minute attacking us. There were Reddit pages, because you can follow this stuff. You get a Google alert, and your name's on a Reddit page, where they were like, this is the message today against Jim Zogby, Jane Klebb, and Nomiki Kantz, the three people who are literally calling out the financial sources of the Democratic Party. And the message was, these three people are racist. Then they pitch it to different publications. BuzzFeed, for instance, ran these pieces. that were verifiably false. If you listened to the committee meetings, if you knew which committee we were on, nobody was talking about race. Nobody was talking about eliminating primaries and putting in caucuses. Like this was what they were talking about to really distract away from the fact that we were calling out the funding and the budget of the Democratic Party. That was one thing. I got a threatening set of flowers delivered to my hotel room in Vegas. I finally went to a DNC member and I said, we understand how this works. It's not hard to figure out the patterns, where the bat signal was sent from. And it was always sent from near Tandon. And then it was echoed by 5 other people, put on Reddit, fake accounts, real accounts would reiterate it. Politico hit pieces, sabotage from this is no joke. This is how they literally kill insurgency, right? Counterinsurgency, whether it's movements or not. Can we just call this what it is? This was her front group to annihilate the left. And yet everyone's been duped.
And so there's 2 arguments here, right? There are people online making the argument that politically she's not that bad in terms of what she stands for in her ideology, which I don't even agree with, as I've just laid out already. I think she has a history of standing for corporatism, right-wing democratic perspectives that she couches in the fact that progressivism, the title of the organization that she's the head of, right? So I don't even buy that. But independent of that, even if she was someone who might be more left-leaning, why pick someone who, though, spent all of their time going after the leftist candidate in primaries?
I think that is, I think that my sense is that is not a bug. That's the feature.
Right. But then I feel like that should be a doubly offensive appointment for the base of the Democrats.
Well, it's not necessarily the base of the Democrats.
Okay, the progressive left
the
in
left.
the Democratic Party.
Well, and he's going to be potentially he will be chairing these hearings. And I found it interesting that Bernie would be. And I find it interesting that almost, within 24 hours, you had 3 of some of the more progressive leaning senators and Congress members come out and support and completely say she's a wonderful person, when we all know that they don't think that.
Right.
Almost like that was
Elizabeth
to pressure
Warren.
Bernie, Elizabeth Warren, Sherrod Brown, Barbara Lee. Almost to influence Bernie in the power structures that he understands, so that he's forced to defend her. And then what happens to Bernie's movement? It's like dividing the left. No, she's not getting confirmed. So what's the point of this? What is the point of this? And also, why is this your priority right now? We are spiraling into Great Depression 2.0, and they're putting the energy into this.
Well, I'm curious as to why they know she's not going to get. It seemed so obvious as soon as her name was announced. Half a dozen Republicans couldn't get to a microphone fast enough to say, we may never even give her a hearing. And I wonder if it isn't just sort of a way, like a twofer. One, it's a way of doing what you're saying, and 2, it's a way of getting a guy like Bruce Reed in, because we couldn't get Neera Tanden in. And
say she even gets in, right? And she's Office of Management and Budget, and Bernie is the ranking chair of the Senate, the Senate Budget Committee, right? So that means that's an automatic handcuff on.
They're trying to handcuff Bernie. They're trying to handcuff Bernie, whether it's pushing him to labor secretary in some delusional stunt that's, who knows who's behind that.
The labor secretary is not pushing him there.
It started with a movement, and they got in his ear, and he's listening to people around him who.
I think you got to allow him the agency of if he wants to be a labor secretary, he's labor secretary. But I don't know. It seems it's just a weird pick, and I am concerned about what comes afterwards, because I don't think she does not strike me as the type of person who is going to do anything except for follow the orders that she's given by the administration. Whereas someone like Bruce Reed becomes an influence on the administration. And that is what I'm really concerned about, because I perceive Biden as a cipher. And so the more ciphers around him, the better, because unless they're pushing from the left, and that's not going to happen. So I want as many ciphers around him as possible, so that it is pressure that comes from the outside that dictates, as opposed to sort of like major obstacles who exist within the context of the administration.
Yeah, I mean, Reed would be Rahm Emanuel-esque in OMB, right? I mean, he would be a kind of malignant force that would be ideological, as opposed to just Neera Tanden being an insufferable human being who also has bad political leanings, but not somebody who's like a specific actor designed to promote austerity.
Right. That's my thinking, but it seems.
But yeah, it's a bizarre way to reward Tanden for her years of being.
Well, I don't think it's just to reward Tanden, right?
But that's what I was going to say.
It's to reward. It's to reward the. It's basically it's a payback to the Clintonites, essentially. Like, we're going to put her in, and this is a sop to the work that she did, and a sop to what Clinton did to get me elected, type of thing. I mean,
gotta love it.
I just hope it's not also a twofer where they're like, she'll never get confirmed, and then we can put in somebody who's to the right of her.
It might also be a way to get rid of her. Like, let's use Neera for what she's great at, and then let's get rid of her because everyone's done.
Right. I mean, I think it could also be that too. Like,
they want her out. Yeah,
just off the table. It's sort of like, when you read about like Debbie Wasserman Schultz, how apparently like Clinton and Obama both could not stand her.
Yeah.
Both wanted to get rid of her, but nobody wanted to expend the effort to get rid of her. They just didn't think it was important enough. And that didn't work out so well because she's also not good. I mean, she's not good at her job.
We saw. Yeah.
Let's go to the phones. Calling from a 917 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Yes, I can. Who's this?
This is Patrick from New York. First time caller, long time listener.
Patrick from New York.
What's happening, Patrick?
Yeah. So I'm calling about two things. One is actually kind of related to the Neera Tanden thing and the OMB. So I'm a student at George Washington University. We're online right now, and they're actually home to a Koch brother funded academic thing called the Regulatory Studies Center.
Okay.
And on the transition team, Biden has put one Bridget Dooling, who is a horrible Koch-funded school, basically. She thinks essentially that he wants to write a paper saying air pollution is going to be good for us because it's going to increase crop cycles and there will be less skin cancer. So yeah, just wanted to point that out and call attention to that because also people at the school are not happy about this, and we're going to be ramping up a campaign to get rid of the center entirely in the next few months. So look out for that, Sunrise and GW.
Excellent.
The other thing, I wanted to recommend a guest to you, a journalist named Talia Jane. She's been covering the protest movement, the protest scene in New York. You may have heard she got punched by a drunk Proud Boy at the DC protest.
Oh yeah, I was following some of that. Yeah.
Yeah. She's doing really good coverage of the New York protest scene and activist movement in general. And I think it'd be great to have her on, and she'd be informative for a lot of how we can get stuff done even at the local level in the left. And
I'm sorry, what's her name?
Talia Jane. She's on Twitter at ITSA _Talia CALIA. You may.
My hearing's terrible, and I still don't get that, but that's okay.
Okay. You may remember she got the other thing she was famous for a couple years back is she got fired from Yelp for basically calling them out for having super low wages and not being able to survive on them. Yeah, I hope everyone else heard that, but yeah, that's what I got for you.
All right, great. Thank you. Appreciate the call. We got it.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. My page is not, my phone page is not refreshing. That's what happened with the timing too.
Yeah,
on the
it's I don't understand.
I still have
what's
Kowalski
happening.
from Nebraska in my phone queue.
Oh, that's weird.
Yes. Oh no, it's one of those days. So meanwhile, what is going on with Georgia at this point is stunning to me. I was listening to Sean Hannity yesterday.
Oh. Where are you?
I dip in because I'm just curious. Like, I'm trying to get a sense of like, what is the conversation they're having? Because I'm a masochist, but I'm also genuinely curious. And he had on Sidney Powell for like, 45 minutes.
Favorite person.
And
I
it's
love
just,
her.
it is.
She's a queen.
And I'm just like, what are they doing? Like, where does this go? And doesn't it hurt? Doesn't it hurt in Georgia? I mean, here is Lou Dobbs on Monday. Like, I don't think these people freelance. I think like if there was if anybody had an issue with what Lou Dobbs was doing or Sean Hannity doing, in terms of the Trump people, they would say like, dude, just chill a little bit. Now I know they've made $170 million
on this grift. Yeah.
Which one?
Trump campaign.
Trump campaign. Got it.
And it's not even the campaign. Apparently, when you sign up to support his challenges to the vote, they tell you in small print, 75% of it goes into his new PAC.
Save America.
Save America, which is, and this is the way it'll work, folks. The PAC will fly Trump and his family around the country, put them up in the nicest hotels. He will do an event wherever he's got any type of business work. So basically, he's got a lifetime free travel to do any type of business or any type of pleasure, whatever it is. All he's got to do is walk over and give a talk to somebody, say hi at the airport, and that's it. And that's the way some of these PAC scams work.
Yeah.
And you can be sure this is the scammiest of these.
So yes, 75% go to the PAC, 25% goes to the RNC. Only when you hit the $5,000 threshold.
You need to give $5,001 before that $1 goes to
the legal defense fund that Sidney Powell's
what I find so interesting though is they're transparent about this. They don't have to be. The Democrats aren't when they do it.
Well, that's true. They're sort of transparent. They also know that they've got a lot of rubes who are doing this. Here is, and then they have a whole ocean of people like Lou Dobbs who are pushing this narrative on cable television.
President Trump says he will do everything he can to fight election fraud. Here he is talking about election fraud yesterday on Fox News.
I'm going to use 125% of my energy. There was tremendous cheating here. Boxes were brought in. The mail-in vote is a disaster. And by the way, if Republicans allow it to happen, you'll never have another Republican elected in the history of this country.
I just realized it's the second time we've played that clip. Why he says 125%. Because he's thinking, I'm making 75% on every dollar that's coming in. What's left over? 125%. That's
quick math.
That's what I was just thinking. Like that, the numbers are floating around his head. There you go.
At a presidential level, you'll never, or at a House level, mail-in voting is a total disaster.
It's called many things. Mail-in voting. It is called software fraud. It is called hardware fraud. It is voter fraud. It is electoral fraud. But if I may, Mr. President, the problem here is that you're not just fighting fraud any more than you were just fighting the Russia hoax. That was an effort, not a hoax, to overthrow your presidency. Not a hoax. An outright effort to overthrow the presidency of the United States that went on from the time you won the office to the time right now. The irregularities in this year's election are not just fraud, electoral or voter. They are another attempt to overthrow the President of the United States. And it's being brought to you by the very same people. While you carry out the battle, Mr. President, for the White House, I ask that you also declassify all of the information and documents related to Obamagate, and do it now. It is time the American people know the truth, the full truth, the whole truth. And we cannot trust the Justice Department, the FBI, or any intelligence agency. And even if we cannot ever restore faith in the Justice Department or the FBI, surely we can preserve the right of the American people to know. That is within your control, your power, and I urge you to use it.
Wait, what was Obamagate again? I can't keep it.
Carter Page.
Oh, right. That was, thank you.
Carter Page gate. I mean, I guess maybe Lou Dobbs is just thinking like, I'm going to end up on World Net Daily, or I'm going to move over to OWN or whatever it is. Incidentally, speaking of which, what's his face? It went over to was it World Net Daily?
Newsmax.
Newsmax.
Yeah.
Halprin.
Yeah.
What? Went to Newsmax?
Mark Halprin is on Newsmax TV.
Wow.
But
they pulled a bunch of I noticed there's a bunch of Fox hosts, very normally Fox hosts, never in the news about anything outrageous.
Daytime Fox hosts.
Yeah, daytime. Yeah, moved them over.
Well, now, I mean, here's the question though, is what is, I mean, I guess for Lou Dobbs, the end game is that, but they are pushing the whole Georgia thing in a way that I think is going to, I mean, I know Trump is supposedly going to do some rallies there, but I mean, it just seems like, I don't know, at one point, doesn't it go past rallying the base to go out and vote in Georgia, and it goes to disempowering the base?
Well, I mean, one, I think you're thinking more strategically than even Dobbs is. He is at the end of his career, I would imagine, at his age, and he's a strict authoritarian. So he just responds the most vitriolically that he possibly can, with the most passion to whatever the dear leader says. And that's what he does. And then, but to your point about mobilizing voters, when you call mail-in voting software fraud, by the way, Trump, his daughter, Kayleigh McEnany, all committed software fraud by voting by mail in the past election, but I digress.
Doesn't matter what you call it.
Yeah, I guess, sure. But when you keep calling that form of voting fraud, paired with saying that the outcome doesn't matter because it's all rigged and the Georgia Republicans are in it with Biden and Soros or whatever, those two things might actually depress turnout, because some people, even though Republicans do like to vote in person, there will be a percentage of Republicans or people who might want to vote for the Republican Senate candidates who would be potentially voting by mail who might not now.
Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to the thing about Obamagate, out of all the gates that they could have mentioned, I do think it has to do with race too. I think they're trying to gin up the racist support, and this is Georgia, so
right.
if they can't dampen the vote on the Democratic side, the very engaged, now extremely organized African-American base in Georgia, then the alternative is what? Bring out the racists.
I wonder if that works. Here is Sean Hannity. And, there's a lot of people who are like, well, Flynn earned his pardon because Sidney Powell, his lawyer, has also been out there basically saying that there's been an entire coup, saying the most bat crap crazy things. People don't understand. She was saying at one point, and this was a couple of weeks ago, and she's just progressed from here, that all the voting tallies went through a server in Germany.
Yeah.
And while she was reporting it, she was also saying our forces are taking over that server right now in Germany. And
her psychic forces.
Yes. Spoiler alert. That's not happening.
Mercury in retrograde, guys.
First of all, not only was the votes not going to a server in Germany and back, there was also no U.S. forces that were taking control of the server. I mean, this is, and here's Sean Hannity, who is basically now pushing the whole pardon everybody thing. Now, the pardon for Flynn that Trump issued was the most sweeping pardon issued by a president for someone else since Ford did Nixon. And there's been multiple pardons since then. Iran-Contra. You had all the stuff with Scooter Libby. He was commuted, but there were others. I mean, there's been all sorts of other pardons that have taken place. This one is very broad because Flynn did so many things that were illegal, ranging from being a paid agent of a foreign power while he was national security chief.
It seems so tame now.
It seems really tame. Turkey was negotiating a deal with him to kidnap a Turkish figure in exile and bring him to Turkey while he was the national security chief of this country. That's a little messed up. Anyways, here is Sean Hannity arguing that Trump has to pardon everybody. Now, Trump can't pardon himself. He would actually have to work out some deal with Pence. Here is Sean Hannity trying to gin up, I guess, support on the right for it.
Anyway, one of the reasons that we got to this point, and this happened, is because of the diligent lawyering, hard work through a lot of difficult days. And I mean difficult, with a very, very stubborn judge that made no sense to me, Emmett Sullivan in this case. Sidney Powell is the attorney for General Flynn. First of all, I'm very happy for the general, for his family, but 4 years of his life basically robbed from him. How are you, Sidney?
Well, we're good. Thank you, Sean. It's a very bittersweet situation. Of course, the relief of being out from under a wrongful criminal prosecution is huge, and we're very grateful to the president for the pardon. But at the same time, from the time I came in the case, I was determined to make the legal system work the way it should have to exonerate an innocent man. It would be nice if we had a, quote, criminal justice system, end quote, that actually worked in that fashion. But unfortunately, I'd estimate that 5 to 10% of our prison population right now is not guilty. But the system did not work as it should have to exonerate them, and we've got to do a better job of that. Not everybody can get a presidential pardon.
Well, that's a good point. And, you know, I watched Andrew Weissman come out and literally say, oh, Biden's AG needs to go after Donald Trump. And I'm like, the president out the door needs to pardon his whole family and himself, because they want this witch hunt to go on in perpetuity. They're so full of rage and insanity against the president. I mean, can the president, I assume that the power of the pardon is absolute, and that he should be able to pardon anybody.
I need to remind people that it was Sidney Powell's client, Michael Flynn, who led the cheer to lock up Hillary Clinton at the RNC. Like, you know, it's like
there's filled of rage on the left and blind hatred of the president.
This is like, it reminds me of like, why are you so angry? Why is the left so angry? That was the big thing in the aughts.
Or like when you slap somebody to get them to calm down. Calm down. Like, no, calm down. You're slapping somebody.
But they also, like, what's so interesting about her argument is she's talking about how there's, like, no due process. And then immediately after, they're like, he has to pardon himself before they put him through a due process.
Exactly.
Immediately.
Assume that the power of the pardon is absolute, and that he should be able to pardon anybody that he wants to.
It is absolute. It's in the Constitution. I don't know about his authority to pardon himself, but it should not be necessary. And aside from that, the president's going to get another 4 years in office to finish the job he started, because the election fraud we are uncovering is massive, and there were foreign actors involved in our system. People from Germany and Serbia and China were all in our election the night it happened. In fact,
I want to get into that with you in a second, but I want to just stay on Flynn for a second. I promise I want to hear.
I love that sound effect so much.
German, Serbian, Chinese. What else was there?
Venezuela, they left that one out.
Oh.
That Hugo Chavez was behind this.
Right.
It's like from the grave.
Wait, it sounds like the global communist sort of conspiracies here, guys. We need to link up with it.
No, I'll tell you something. How lame is the global communist conspiracy that they give us Biden?
Yeah, really. And Neera Tanden, was she behind it the whole time? We had no idea.
Yeah, this is just the global communists. We're going to pretend like we're doing centrism, but Medicare for all is going to be done by February 1st, and we'll get the Green New Deal by March, and all the while, Joe will be talking about how he's reaching across the aisle.
Mm-hmm. It is. These guys are so light years ahead the way that they're doing this. It's so brilliant.
I think Sidney Powell's in love with Donald Trump.
What is good? He is, like, honestly, like, does she not have any family?
It's a little sad. I actually looked on her Wikipedia the other day. I think she is divorced. I don't know if she has children. I thought about that. I was like, this woman is obsessed with Donald Trump.
There is something like, I just don't know
It's
if you can have that that level of shamelessness where you could say this stuff with a straight face, and she's repeating it all over the place. Unless
it's but they live this. This is their last 4 years. They've put everything out there for it. This is their identity. How does someone let go of their identity so quickly? And now she's in the limelight, so she's been working at it, and now there's just a front, on every news network. Of course, she's going to double down, triple down.
I feel like Andy Kaufman sort of did some of this too, but he at least had the ability to go home and go like, "That was hilarious."
I'm a comedian.
The same thing. I don't know.
Maybe he's behind it too, from the grave.
At the age of 19, she was accepted into the University of North Carolina Law School, where she graduated in 1978 with a Juris Doctor degree.
At 19?
Yes, she began her legal career as one of the youngest federal prosecutors in the U.S.
This is what happens when you're
Totally
like
normal.
prodigy wonderkins.
Yes.
You end up like that,
Yeah,
in love with Donald Trump and simping for him on TV.
Whole life.
that
Whole life.
I know that's why that's too much. Yeah, that's I would never. That's like when you read about those kids who go to college when they're 10. I'm like, I don't know if they're socially, emotionally prepared for that.
Yeah.
But wow.
Cautionary tale.
Mm-hmm.
Don't skip grades.
That is nuts. Let's since we're on the how nuts are these people bandwagon in terms of the voting fraud. And let's be clear here. All of it has been adjudicated. And so it's not this is not one of those situations where it's there's some reporter and, they were digging, for an alternate free weekly paper, and they were digging in this, and then the government came and shut them down, and they're trying to get the word out. No one's believing them. And, oh, well, they found a kilo of heroin and in the back of his car. So it's clearly and
Gary Webb.
Yeah, exactly. A huge cache at child pornography. And this person's no. All of these things have been adjudicated in federal and state courts. 35, 40, we might be up to court cases. They have lost virtually every one of them except for one. And the one that they won was on a very small
Changed
point.
11
Yeah.
votes.
And so just understand, and they have access to, this is also not oh my God, if only this guy could actually be heard, in national, Sidney Powell just spent an hour on one of the top-rated cable shows in the country on national radio. 25 million people get exposure to it. Here is Rudy Giuliani, a key witness in the Arizona election fraud case. And this is the story that he has. I heard her talking about this, and Sidney Powell on the Hannity thing, and she's like, "We've got a witness." And Hannity's like, "Is there an affidavit?" Well, there's not an affidavit, no, but they said it. And that was the end of it. It was oh, okay. Yeah, so hard to get an affidavit or take a sworn testimony. Right, but here he is.
I know it's kind of been, in the press, it's kind of been poo-pooed that, this doesn't go back to Hugo Chavez. But I personally debriefed the son of a Cuban intelligence officer who had firsthand knowledge, speaking with two of Hugo Chavez's family members, that in the Maduro election, when the populist uprising threatened Venezuela's totalitarian leadership, that Hugo Chavez's family members said that don't worry, that it's guaranteed that their father invested the money to build the SGO voting machine system. So in a nutshell, these systems are not what you've been told, if you've been told anything. They are connected to the internet. There is no transparency of how the voter information is processed, moved, and stored. And as a matter of fact, these companies have refused to allow any type of inspection into their code, and they always decry, it's our IP, it's IP protection. But with the declaration, I believe, with Jay Johnson, was our Secretary of Homeland Security. He declared that the national election system was now.
Oh, so was he actually crediting Jay Johnson for something? Now I love when they cherry pick when they listen to, these
wait a
Obama
second.
officials.
You're not being skeptical of the idea that guy personally interrogated a Cuban intelligence officer who, of course, was friends with two of Hugo Chavez's family members, who, of course, were told 7-8 years ago that Hugo Chavez was setting up this vote counting system that I guess will live on into the future as a mechanism of making sure that centrists get elected.
Well, in America the whole time, clearly.
Witness.
I
Chavez,
can
big fan of centrists.
I can hear Michael doing bits about Hugo Chavez, election machine technician.
Yeah.
Exactly.
What I don't understand is let's just entertain it for a second. Who decided to use these election machines? Was this just something that unilaterally they have just as much power in these states to use these machines as the Democrats do?
Not get it. You don't get it. Look,
I don't.
Have AI. And they've been programmed by Hugo Chavez himself.
But not the Utah and Florida ones. Not the Utah and Florida ones.
Did you see what was the 2001? Did you see the Space Odyssey with Hal? This is a Hal situation where they created a network of voting machines that would pick moderate Democrats in the future to win elections, right? That's what's going on here. And soon, the one mess up was that Chavez wanted Klobuchar. That he really wanted.
Don't you? Chavez? No. Never mind. Keep going.
Klobuchar.
Klobuchar.
No, Hugo Chavez picked out Klobuchar, and I think this was before she actually even ran for the Senate. And he wanted her to be the president of the United States. So I got news for you. I still think that it's in the offing. It's not clear to me.
She still might be president, you mean?
Kamala Harris has not been inaugurated yet. Right?
Scary name.
Right?
Not
She's not been
Swap
inaugurated.
her out.
So I think that there's still something in the machine that could lead to Klobuchar surge, like a late Klobuchar surge where she gets to be vice president.
Momentum.
I haven't quite figured out exactly how that's in, but I think that's possible because Chavez was a huge Klobuchar fan. And so I think that's probably what's going on. And where's my check from the Sean Hannity program? Don't I get
I really like that his main witness is the son of an intelligence officer. It's like someone's like, yeah, my dad saw some crazy stuff.
Wait a second.
My dad.
Wasn't an actual Cuban intelligence officer?
I thought I missed that. It was the son of a Cuban intelligence officer who can we get the first part of that? Because I want to know the chain of what do that?
A super reliable chain
and
of
then
custody.
Diebold spun off the premier election system to Dominion as a result of the Raiders manual. So,
pause it for 1 second.
I know.
Diebold, incidentally, was a voting machine company run by the co-chair of George Bush's election campaign in Ohio.
So obviously
in 2004.
sympathizer.
So let's see, how can I further George Bush's agenda? I know. I'll give my technology to Hugo Chavez so that he can get Klobuchar.
Kind of been, in the press, it's kind of been poo-pooed that, this doesn't go back to Hugo Chavez. But I personally debriefed the son of a Cuban intelligence officer who had firsthand knowledge.
Hold on. Cuban intel son. Okay, go ahead.
And a server.
Speaking with two of Hugo Chavez's family members that
Now, what kind of family members are we talking about here? These could be, we're dealing with sons of
family.
Yeah. lot of sons in Latin America,
nephews,
guys.
uncles.
Big family.
I learned from that Curb Your Enthusiasm episode that the son of a doctor is basically a doctor. So the son of
the maid came in and gave her testimony. She once heard them gossiping. This is insane.
Hugo Chavez's fourth cousins, twice removed, said that on his deathbed. Don't worry. Klobuchar.
Amy will carry out our agenda.
We'll hold him.
Momentivo.
Oh my God, these guys.
If only the Democrats were so aligned with Hugo Chavez's ghost.
I mean, honestly, like that level of competence would be awesome. What's going to happen? Klobuchar will be waiting in the wings, and there will be a reduced stimulus bill following the pandemic, which I also started through my voting machines. Why would you push mail-in voting if you controlled the voting machines? Why would you do that?
They're controlling the count for the mail-ins too. That's the issue.
But why wouldn't you just have everybody show up? Like, why would you need the mail-in voting
votes afterwards?
Yeah.
Seems simpler, but then, that might throw people off. You need to make it more complex, so it's more...
It needs to confuse people. You need to have a grid behind you. That's how it works.
Eyes are always the ones that are the most convoluted.
That's true.
This is all about Venezuela overpowering the United States, guys.
Have you guys heard of Halt and Catch Fire, that AMC show about...
Yeah.
I'm just imagining that set in Venezuela in the 80s. Be like, we're going to make voting machines.
Let's play this clip from Not Even a Show. I have listened also to Rudy Giuliani's radio show.
Why? You're committed.
Sadly, I have a problem. And I am genuinely fascinated by this, and I always have been. That's how I got into this business in the first place was, I was in LA and driving around a lot for work. And I started pulling over the car to call into right-wing talk radio shows. And this is 20 some odd years ago now. And I continue.
Also a Venezuelan plot.
Yeah, this is actually even maybe.
He called you up. Said, Sam, I'm investing in you now. You just have to start making your phone calls.
I can tell you, I remember exactly where I was when it was announced that Rush Limbaugh had an addiction, was arrested for pulling the cash out because he had an oxy addiction. I remember exactly where I was. I was in the parking lot of this studio that we were editing in Venice, California. And I was like, oh my God, this is going to be, how do people react to this? And they just, blew it off. I mean, even though for years he had been saying if you are morally decrepit if you are addicted to drugs. But all right, that aside, Rudy Giuliani has a radio show. It is an hour every night. I think it's on WROR. I believe it's on ROR. It's on WABC or WROR out of New York. He has a monologue for 4 or 5 minutes, and then he just takes a series of phone calls, which sound like they're all from the same guy. It's either hey, Mayor Giuliani, Mayor Rudy, you're the best. This is Vito. I'm calling from Long Island, or this is Rocco. I'm calling from New Jersey.
Staten Island.
Kevin, I'm calling from Staten Island, and it's the exact same calling in every day.
You're a hero.
Black sports star on the New York Jets.
And they're just talking about how this is the end of America. We need more of you. I wish we could clone you, Mr. Mayor, but we can't. So anyways, here he is. Here's Rudy Giuliani, except this time it's not that guy from Staten Island. It's not the guy from Long Island. It's not the guy from New Jersey. It's Chris James from Not Even a Show.
Congratulations.
After all, we're not communists.
Right. That's right. Sorry if you've covered this already, Mayor, but what was the black stuff that was seeping out of your head there in that when you're doing that?
Oh my God, it was some of my brains. It was some of my brains. I was thinking so hard. God, it was this was a very rough press conference. It was got to get everything across. You got to think really hard. I had a little brain, just a little. I was able to take a rag and stuff it back in. And you know what happened? What my doctor said? Because of that, by putting it back in, it rejuvenated my brain power. After all, we're capitalists. And now I'm twice as smart. After all, we're capitalists.
Let me just explain. He missed, pause it quick. He missed said a reference to The Godfather where it said, after all, we're not communists. And anyway, go on.
Oh, I see.
Okay.
Very, very fortuitous occasion. And you can check with my doctor, Dr. Fadugal. He's a very, very famous brain surgeon. Hard to find, but and he likes to remain private. But Dr. Fadugal is very well known. And every once in a while, he gets a case like that. I was very nervous, and he put my brains right back. Man, he put my brains back
Hold on,
in.
pause it for a second. Because
That's it.
he started out okay. Like, I thought that was endearing a little bit, as much as Rudy Giuliani can be. Like, oh, he made a joke out of it.
Right.
It was part of my brains, but like, maybe
Went
don't go on
too
about
far.
it.
Let it go.
Very private.
I was stuffing it back in. Next caller.
He has time to fill, guys. It's an hour show.
Right. His producer's going like, stretch. We don't have any more callers. We don't have any
Say
more callers.
Fadugal. Say Fadugal.
Oh my God.
We have to fulfill our quota of the hour.
Riffing with Giuliani.
Does Giuliani appear on camera though for his show, or is that was like his thing that he did? Or
It's strictly a radio show. I think he does most of it on the road, as far as I can tell at this point, because he's traveling around. He can't possibly be back in New York while he's doing this. I have no idea, but it's not on camera, so we didn't get a chance to see him. We didn't see the look on his face as he was doing that. Although I think he's so far gone now that I think he was like, I thought that was great. Can we get another caller to call in and talk about that? Because I thought I killed on that. This is, I mentioned this the other day, right? That there is a study by, I can't remember where it came out of now.
CDC.
Was it the CDC who did the Kansas study? So Kansas had they imposed a statewide mask mandate, but multiple counties opted out. All the big counties in Kansas kept it. Multiple counties opted out. The counties that kept it, the infection still grew, but it grew at like a 6% slower rate from when they instituted the mandate. In the counties that opted out, it grew at 100% rate of increase. And, obviously there's a little bit of apples and oranges, but you have counties that have less population, you would imagine would have less rate of infection, or at least in terms of acceleration, because people are more spread out. There's
probably fewer places to hang out too. And then they all go there.
Yeah, well, that's true, I guess. But I mean, if you look in New York State, counties with fewer populations and more space, they simply they have less transmission.
Cars, less.
You're in cars more.
Subway,
you go in. You're not.
Mm-hmm.
And you have theoretically more outdoor space. Blah blah blah.
Except for church, which is
well, that's also true. But here is Fox and Friends finding out about this study that shows that somehow, when you block the explosion of virus out of your face, even a little bit, it cuts down on the amount of virus that comes to other people.
Right. How many months into the pandemic is this?
This is look at like how stunned they are about this information.
Ultimately, right now, what's going on with the pandemic is, and we don't know exactly how many people may have been infected over the Thanksgiving holiday weekend, but the number of cases in our hospitals is going through the roof. In 41 states, it's going up. I read a great survey and
they look about this too, is that Ducey is the only one who takes it seriously.
He's the science, listen, as the chief acknowledger of science on this panel, the sole acknowledger of science, I'm a special correspondent here. I read the newspaper. That's not coming from Fox.
I think it's a little bit more self-interest.
I think he had COVID.
You think he had it? He may have, but he certainly has been the only one on the show who's taken it seriously in any way. And so And he's right. In California, they're worried about being completely overrun at 125% capacity by mid-December. In New York State, they're already asking, and the real problem, of course, is not the beds, right? The real problem is we don't have enough doctors and enough nurses to deal with this. And in New York State, Cuomo's already asked for people, if you're a retired health worker, we may need you to come out of retirement. I mean, and New York is not in the worst case when you look around the country by far. So here's Ducey. He's trying to introduce this. They must have a thing where it's like everybody gets to bring up a story, and you wonder, like Kilmeade and Ainsley Earhart are like, oh, Steve's gonna do the whole thing like COVID's real again.
Can't we just talk about Obama?
At the scientific data in my home state of Kansas. In the month of July, they had a statewide mandate for masks. Now, the problem with Kansas was some counties would actually enforce it and other counties would not. In the counties that enforced the mask mandate, the number of cases of coronavirus actually went way down. And in the counties where they did not enforce the mask mandate, it went way up.
Really fascinating. Steve, you're blowing our minds here.
The mask mandate, it went way up.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh. You just have to do it smartly and do it safely.
It means apparently masks work.
4 million U.S. cases in the month of November alone. That's a third of the total number of coronavirus cases in the U.S. since this pandemic began.
Wow, really? You got to do it. You got to wear the mask safely and rightly.
Safely and smartly, bigly.
I mean,
don't wear it where you're killing your brain cells.
Well, you don't want a situation where you put the mask and you tie it around your neck and then pull it really tight until you pass out.
Right.
Don't do that. That is
like the dress she's wearing. By the way.
That's one of the things that people don't talk about is all the times where you could possibly self-asphyxiate by not putting the mask on properly. It's supposed to go over your mouth, not around your neck, and then pulled tight until you pass out.
Or if you breathe in way too hard and snap it off of your ears and suck it down your throat like some sort of vacuum seal.
You could choke on it.
Choke on it. That's happened to me a few times.
You also got to be careful, like that you do not, like if your ears are too far back from your face, and you pull the elastic like this, conceivable the elastic could break, snap back into your eyes, and you could go blind. So,
I think it's pretty amazing to watch someone in real time maybe realize that all the work they've done over the past year has been part of the reason why so many people have died.
Well, you think that she goes home, rolls over and looks at Sean Hannity and goes, Sean, is it possible that masks actually do work?
That would require a level of introspection that they don't possess, but like that almost resembled a positive news segment.
Well, what's funny about that?
Responsible news segment, I meant to say.
I was just gonna say real quick. What's funny about that is when Ducey's saying it looks like masks work, and then she is so quick to follow it up with, "Yeah, we're having so many cases now, relative to how much." It's like justifying why we have to admit this now. Like we would like to continue to deny it, but guys, we're getting crazy with the cases.
Well, I think what's next is they realize that everyone's going to be mandated to take this vaccine, and they're going to come in and say, well, no, but we're wearing masks now, so we don't have to take the vaccine. This is our version of the vaccine. And so it's like their incrementalism is to acknowledge the mask just in time when everyone's being forced to take the vaccine, which is whatever the next infringement on your personal rights is.
I don't think that there's going to be I think the way that the vaccine, the mandate for the vaccine is going to be, can't send your kid to schools unless your kids have been vaccinated, which is actually the case now with several other vaccinations.
Already.
That you can't get on a plane unless you've been vaccinated. That I think maybe even a train. We're all going to get an app, and it's going to have like a little scan code. I think is probably what the deal is going to be. It's going to be something along those lines. I think.
It will be interesting. like say someone's been vaccinated early and isn't masked. Like, how do you signal that to the public? I don't know.
maybe it's like any sort of medical procedure, if you want to force people who are already, who have medical illness, they can't get a surgery, they can't enter a doctor's office, anything unless they have that vaccine.
I think there's going to be stuff like that, but it's going to be interesting. Well, we're wearing masks now. Soon, I'm convinced they're going to accept the reality of this pandemic when the next one happens.
Yeah.
When they say, when it's COVID 2027 and they're like, this isn't nearly as bad as COVID 19.
Yeah.
I'm curious, like if someone could go and look up Ducey's comment section. I'm very curious how Fox is reacting to him, the Fox and Friends audience. Like if they're turning on him.
Got a ton of backlash after admitting that Trump likely wasn't going to win the election a few days ago from the Fox News audience. So
I would be curious if Laura Ingraham ever traveled to Venezuela. All right. Should we play this Dave Rubin thing?
Yes, please. I've been waiting all day.
Folks, if I decide to end my participation on this show, to leave the show, to early retire, it will be to become a health worker so that I can provide personal attention to President Joe Biden for the next 4 years. And if all these things happen, this is the reason why.
All right, you know what? Here we go. I'm going to make a bold statement. Michael, I'm going to make a bold statement today. Bold statement. Here we go. If Joe Biden is sworn in on January 20th, 2021, and he completes a 4-year term, actually completes a 4-year term, I will retire. I will retire at the end of that term. That will be it. I will disappear in just over 4 years. 4 years and about a month and a half. That'll be it. That's how convinced. I will just disappear from public life altogether. I will delete all of my accounts, and then you'll never hear from me again. That's how convinced I am that it ain't going to happen. He will not be president for 4 years. He either won't be president at all because of the election fraud and all that kind of stuff, which, by the way, is gaining momentum. We're not even really covering it that much today, but it is actually gaining momentum. Giuliani was at a hearing in Arizona today. They found some really bizarre stuff with these these late night 1 a.m. to 6 a.m. vote dumps. I think in Pennsylvania, Rand Paul was tweeting about it this morning.
Rand Paul.
I mean, there's just some stuff going on, but I do not think that one way or another, Joe Biden will not be president for 4 years.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, this thing is gaining momentum. It's also, didn't he predict like 30% black vote for Donald Trump too?
Yeah.
This is a win-win for him, by the way. One, if Biden serves out his full term and he realizes that he's actually not very talented at being a standard conservative radio talk show host, and now that he no longer has the cover of being, I'm a liberal who shits all over other liberals from a conservative perspective, then you have to rely on your actual talent as a conservative commentator, which isn't hard, but he's that stupid and untalented and bad at it that he needs an out. And if Biden doesn't serve it all the way through, there you go. Then he can keep trying to do what he's doing.
Right now, and like he's like, this video will pay for my retirement if Biden doesn't. And otherwise, I've got my exit strategy. I mean, this guy's making a ton of dough, and he's thinking 4 years from now, maybe that's when his deal runs out with the Blaze, and it's his exit strategy. It's brilliant.
Get ready for Harlan Hill. It's going to be all Harlan Hill all the time.
But there's option C where he just disregards it and keeps doing what he's doing. I don't think
probably like how many times has he made arguments that dissipate, and they're thinking like what's going to happen in the next 30 days. They're not thinking 5-6 month strategy. It's 30-day strategy to make sure that they get as many clicks, they hit their profits, whatever that they need to do.
Although profits are like barely.
I'm gonna do a bold prediction here too.
Go.
If Joe Biden does not serve out his complete term, I am going to retire within 8 to 10 years.
Sam,
8 to 12 years.
8 to 25 years.
Really depends on how Saul's 529 does.
I was just gonna say the college fund is looking.
It depends. I mean, if the kids if I'm starting to get the idea, like around like in 5 or 6 years, that this guy may be like maybe a scholarship kid.
Hey, we could have free college by then, Sam. Listen, it's all about the pressure from the left.
Knock on wood.
Knock on wood.
Dave Rubin,
hard.
Super bold statement. No one, if just the idea that if anybody held anybody to account, Dave Rubin would not. He would evaporate. He would not even exist.
Sam, do you think that like other conservatives like Dave Rubin? Hannity hangs out with other conservatives. Like, is Dave Rubin part of the tribe, really, other than appearing on shows together?
Oh, God, no.
Okay. He's in a lonely place.
He's married to a guy. They don't. No, of course not. First of all, I think broadly speaking, they are, they more or less just like see each other as like business opportunities. Mm-hmm. I think like he was sitting with Michael Knowles. I think those guys genuinely like to sit around, smoke cigars, and pretend like they're guys with each other, and they're not. And I think that I find it very hard to believe that Rubin would go out there. I mean, remember, Rubin was like promoting, like, we all went out, Joe Rogan and Sam Harris, the IDW went out to dinner or something like that. And none of those people talk to him anymore.
Well, I mean, I still love that Joe Rogan clip of him just challenging him on basic.
Then not only did he challenge it, well, Rogan, I think worked construction at one point, or his dad was an architect or something to that effect. And
same thing.
Questioned him. Well, I mean, if your dad's an architect, he's going to bring.
An architect's son told me about construction one time, and then somehow it led to Hugo Chavez.
Well, no, I mean, like, I have friends who are architects. They're on building sites constantly, and so I would imagine. I mean, if I see like heavy machinery, Saul and I are there in a minute. But when this was like years ago, Rubin brought up like, we don't need regulations, and Rogan was like, what do you mean? Well, you don't have building regulations. Like, the builders are going to be incentivized to do the right thing. And
by the free market.
Yeah. And Rogan's just like, you're out of your mind.
Yeah. It was fun. It was a great time. Because like, this is a 12-year-old who discovered libertarianism and read a few internet articles about it. That's the extent.
Exactly. Like the idea, they'll do it because if you build something bad, then people won't use your services anymore. All you got to do is spend, like, I don't know, if you ever watched that show Homes on Homes out of Canada, I don't know if they still have that anymore, where he's a Canadian builder and he goes in and he's just incredibly indignant about people not following code and bad builders. And he goes in and he rips out the bad stuff and he puts in the good stuff. And it is rampant in that business because people will go in, people want a contractor. He comes in and they cut corners. You don't know what best practices are. There's no way for you to know. And half of it's locked up too. And,
there it is.
That's on it.
I'd be sitting here going, I'm for government. You know what I mean? Like, if it really operated in a slim way. But the government doesn't do anything good. Right. Name one problem you could possibly have in your life, Joe Rogan, that you'd be like, get the government to solve this. Do they do the post office well? No. What do they do well?
They do the post office.
90% of America loves them.
But guess what? If the post office closed tomorrow, it would be all right. You'd still get mail. Amazon would pick. No, it wouldn't. Amazon would pick that up.
Through UPS, it would cost a lot more.
It wouldn't, though. Competition would start kicking in between UPS and FedEx and Amazon and drones and blah 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 and DHL. They'd all start. It would probably drop prices because right now we've just got this artificial thing that sits there that then allows them to price according to that. But if you drop that, why is the government in that business anymore? I have 3 chickens. I've really done the Joe Rogan lifestyle here over the last couple of years. So I have 3 chickens right now. I'm going to give you a good UPS story. We ordered them. They were born in August on a Monday in Cleveland. They hatched that day. They threw them in a box with a little hole, USPS, and they showed up at my door in LA on a Tuesday. The USPS has been doing that for about 100 years.
It's the only way you can do it, by the way.
What?
Yeah.
Sorry,
Just
that
made
was
an
the
argument
chickens,
against
not the
himself.
post office.
He's still
Do
just.
they fly the boxes? Like
3 years later, Rogan brought up that code thing in another conversation with somebody else. I think we played all those clips. Of course we did. It was celebratory. News alert, folks. This is going to be tough for the president. He's not going to like this. I am sorry. Where we go? This is an AP news alert. Bill Barr tells AP that Justice Department hasn't uncovered widespread voting fraud that could have changed the 2020 election. God.
No, with that attitude.
Rhino.
You know how little. You know
Where the hell is Dunham or Durham? Where's Durham?
You know how little evidence you have to have for that hack Bill Barr to come out and unequivocally say
9
this?
votes he found in an office in Pennsylvania and made a national story of it because 5 of them were for Trump and 4 of them were for Biden. 9 votes in an office in Pennsylvania, and it was a 2-day story from the Justice Department.
Yep, that's how pathetic your case has to be for
This was
ultimate.
a dry run.
Yeah.
They are going to do this again at one point, and it is going to be nasty.
might be over the Senate.
They will set up
all we know
infrastructure to make it, a stronger case next time around.
Let's take a quick phone call, and then we'll take a couple IMs, so we'll get out of here. Calling from a 336 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hey, guys. This is Josh Hill calling from Winston-Salem, North Carolina. How are you doing?
Good. How you doing, Josh? What's on your mind?
I'm doing wonderful. So today's my birthday, but it's not about me today at all. It's World AIDS Day today. And coincidentally, I'm HIV positive. And so I just wanted to do a little bit of awareness for the world because it's really important, I think. We need to remember the ones that have lost their lives to this terrible disease, but we need to also celebrate the modern miracles that have advanced life fulfillment for millions of people around the world. When I was first diagnosed in January of 2015, I felt like I'd been handed down a death sentence for loving the person that I loved. But it turns out there's a lot of studies that show that people who live with HIV tend to live a little longer because they're forced to go to the doctor like every 3 months and get like complete full panel blood work done. So we're able to detect things earlier than usual and get those treatments done. So we're actually able to live a little bit longer. There's much more work to be done when it comes to HIV and AIDS research, but the progress made as of today enables me to enjoy my life and fun activities as if I don't have the disease at all. I'm what's called undetectable, which means that I can't transmit the virus to any human being at all per the CDC. I never thought I'd get HIV. I thought I was invincible, and I wasn't. I'm at ease with this aspect of my life now, but I wouldn't have wished it on any other person. Diagnosis can trigger underlying mental illness, as it did with me. It almost took my life 3 times in 2015. I could write a book on the stigma surrounding HIV and AIDS because I hear it so often, it's dizzying. However, I just kindly request that if you hear jokes about HIV and AIDS, call it out. You never know who you might be hurting. Trust me, my family never knew they were hurting me until after I told them. And it was a sad day. They all cried because we've got a dark sense of humor in our family. So they just didn't know.
Well, I want to say thank you for calling in. I am intimately aware, I lost a family member to AIDS. So I completely understand the stigma and, some of my family's reaction and all of that. This was much earlier on in my life, but yeah, thank you for calling in. I saw your tweet and happy birthday. I appreciate all of the information for everybody because there still is a lot of misinformation out there about that disease. And, when we're talking about COVID and the pandemic, we're intimately reminded of another Republican administration's response or lack thereof to a disease in Ronald Reagan and the fact that his complete malfeasance is the directly resulted in mass death, and including, my uncle's. So I really appreciate that and of calling in and happy birthday too.
Happy birthday.
Thank you again. Not just one more thing about Reagan. It wasn't just his malfeasance. He was, I can't remember where it was or what the event was, but he was on some like interview panel or something with a couple of like world leaders. And the journalist asked him like, so what are you going to do about the HIV and AIDS crisis going on? I'm pretty sure his wife was there too. They laughed on stage.
Yeah.
They just laughed. And the rest of the world leaders were like, what the F is wrong with you guys?
And also recognizing Dr. Fauci's role in really understanding the complexity of the virus. And, you know, it just shows you how important one doctor and who's dedicated their life to a form of research can really impact, you know, any sort of treatment. So it's amazing.
Josh, thank you for the call. Really appreciate you're making us aware of that. And I'm sorry for, you know, all that you've had to go through with that, but I'm glad it sounds like you're, at least much of that is in your rear window. So,
yeah, absolutely, guys. Thank you so much for doing what y'all do.
All right. Well, you're getting one of these for your birthday, whether you want it or not. There you go.
Yay.
Appreciate the call.
Thank you.
All right. That is it for our call-in portion of the program, ladies and gentlemen.
iPhones.
Let's read some IMs, and then we will get out of here. We still have a lot of, like, we will play this Obama clip tomorrow. And, of course, Tucker weighs in on the vaccination. He'll find some angle where he blames black people, is my guess about it. But how much control do MSNBC hosts have over who is on their show? I deeply love Chris Hayes' body of work, his podcast, and the stuff he introduces his audience to. But does he does have friendly interviews with people like Neera, and that makes me a bit wary. I mean, I can tell you, I don't know what that dynamic is. In terms of like Hayes and his producers. I can tell you that when I've been on, like they sort of tiptoe around, like there were people that they offered up that I was like, not really, I'm not interested. And then it was like, well, but you know, we don't have anybody else available. And it's like, okay, you know, it's usually, I don't know. I could never really figure out, was it like, is it because these people are on the payroll, or is it like they have to get them into, I don't know. I do know, well, I don't know this for sure, but it has always been my speculation, that I think that there are trade-offs that people like Hayes makes, where it's like, if I bring on these people and do these topics, it will help in terms of ratings. It will help in terms of my relationship with the executive suite essentially here, and it will allow me to do this or that. I mean, I know that for me as a contributor, I'm sure, Nomi, you have a dynamic like this too. Like, I don't know what percentage over the years. I mean, I've been doing this now. I've been going on these TV shows for 16 years. I don't know what percentage of them those hits are just like completely useless. I would say pretty high. I mean, like I can count on maybe one, certainly within two hands of times that I've gone on that I felt like what I had to say in that moment was important. I mean, I've talked about those times here. Like I got to say, suck on this to Thomas Friedman on live television. And that was worth it for me. And I got into a fight with Pataki off camera. And Jonathan Alter, he came on the show afterwards when we had a green room conversation about Social Security and Medicare. At the time they were trying to cut it. And I was on Hayes' show just by chance on the night that Trump bombed Syria and was the only person on primetime television on MSNBC who said we shouldn't do this. So there, and when Bolton was picked, I was there and just happened to be on with Ari Melbourne. I was like, Bolton's, they had all these former Republicans on who were like, yeah, he's, mainstream conservative. I'm like, the dude was rejected by a Republican Senate. And so there, and that may be all the times that it was worth it, really, for the most part. But and then of course the war on Christmas stuff, but that's the negotiation I make with myself. I'll go on. There's some stuff I won't do. There were times I would get a call from CNN, we're doing a thing on how Nancy Pelosi's hairdo is like Santa Claus or something. And I'm like, what? Or if I had to go on and talk about during the Obama years, it was rough, man. You go on Dayside and it's like you're talking about Prince Andrew or whatever his and his girlfriend or whatever stuff I have no idea about. And I would have to say I can't do that. But I would try and do stuff just so that you have the opportunity, right? I mean, that dynamic happens, right?
If you don't go on, they forget about you very quickly. If you get exhausted, if you take a week off, if you go on vacation, it's you suddenly have to get back into the booker's awareness. But yeah, it's weird. I mean, the one thing I'll say about CNN that I guess maybe a couple of times on MSNBC has happened, but it would happen all the time on CNN. They would bring me on to talk about something and you'd be sitting in the chair mic'd up and they're like, breaking news, or maybe it wasn't even breaking news. They just changed a segment. Be like, there's a shooting in Florida right now. We need you to argue gun control. Go. And I would be there in the chair reading rapidly about what happened in Florida and then coming up with 3 points. I mean, that's the secret to all these segments is have 3 things to say and try to get them all out no matter what they ask you. There's your media training. Have fun. That's it. Congratulations. Now that know the secret. Don't answer their questions. Just say what you want to say. Say interesting point. But actually, let's go back to this. No, but I look back and I think the other side of this is if you're not a paid contributor, it's exploitation. There used to be a time 10 years ago where you got paid, and some places still do this, not a lot. You got paid for every single hit every single time you went on, even if you weren't a contributor, meaning an official signed contract. And now it's just exploitation. And you use it sometimes, if you go on one network, you're using it as leverage maybe to get a contract with the other network. So you're doing double duty and it's sucking up your day. It takes an hour to get there. They do your hair and makeup for an hour if you're a woman, an hour to get back, and your day's sucked up. And it's all with the idea of you're potentially how well you're going to play the game. And it's, I look back and I'm like, I wasted many, many, many years of my life doing that stuff, and how much of it was productive. Couple moments, like you said, Sam. I think my biggest moment was during the 2016 race, literally calling out the money funneling scheme of the Clinton campaign and getting a lot of.
Yeah, I think those moments. Where and from my perspective, I watched Janine get skewered in the run up to the Iraq war. And during that time, there were no voices on the left at all. And not just on the left, what people would just call the most banal liberal today was just not allowed on television. And they kicked Donahue off, Phil Donahue. And at that time, I know for a fact, MSNBC at that time, this is in 2001 and 2 and 3 and even in 4, I think, that Robert Wright, who I think was the head of GE at the time, would let's put, I want Luntz on there. Luntz started out on MSNBC, I'm pretty sure. And
Tucker.
I used to go on. It was Tucker, Scarborough Country. It was Pat Buchanan. Mm-hmm. Dan Abrams was the closest. It didn't change there until 2006 when Olbermann started getting articulating stuff. He started doing that in late 4, I think, in 5. And so, from my perspective, it was there's no voices that are remotely on the left. I got to go out there and do that. And it wasn't hard. I wanted to get away from my family anyways at that time. So, but I didn't get paid for any of that until a couple of years ago. I just basically told them, I said, look, I got to pay for a babysitter when I go. Right. I'm not you got to just at least let me, cover that and give me some cash.
They're like, wait, but the car, the black Lexus that picked you up, that wasn't worth it? Driving in the aircraft, taking the subway?
I actually am still in touch with one or two of those guys who I met. They would come and pick up. That was my favorite part of the thing more often than not. Just the conversation I had with those people. Nick.
Subway, I'm giving something away. If you want to get like you have a dinner appointment downtown, I'm like, okay, I'll take that because I need to get downtown later in the day. I definitely did. I was like, oh, I have hair and makeup done for my dinner appointment. Awesome.
Nick from PA. Sam, when are you going to start your exploratory committee in Pennsylvania to take Pat Toomey's Senate seat or the PA governorship? I'm not a carpetbagger. I'll tell you that right now. Boston Bernie Bro. Driving versus flying to holiday gatherings. The Massachusetts Department of Public Health's list of states deemed low risk to visit look like this. Number 1, Hawaii. That's it. Might take a Nantucket Clipper around Cape Horn for my next vacation, as the Panama Canal fees are a bit steep these days. Snack the court. Sam, I always start the show late and scrub back to the start. I've learned where to stop based on your head. Looking to your right at the beginning of every show, I need to know what you're looking at. When I look like this, I'm looking at Emma.
Right.
Or when I look like this, I'm pretending to look at Emma.
Or at your iPad.
Or at my iPad, yeah.
Or there's the screen too. Like if you have a clip up, there's a screen behind Emma, right?
Oh yeah, no,
and
that's
to the right.
That in this iteration of the show, we don't have that because nobody's in here. Nobody's playing it locally.
Right.
Chardonnay Socialist, feeling your computer pain. I don't do technology so well either. Good luck with all that. McMackerel, hey Sam, I know you have a lot going on over there, but are you planning any episodes about global topics at the moment? Really missing Michael's internationalist perspective on the show. Either way, love you all. Left is best from Germany. Not at the moment, but to be honest with you, we're not planning anything at the moment, but there'll be more coming. In fact, tomorrow I don't know if it's really a globalist perspective. It really has to do more with the United States foreign policy, but we're having, who's on tomorrow? It's Wertheim, right? Yes. Brendan? Mm-hmm. Okay.
We're talking about Palestine today on our show, if they want to check it out. We did a bunch on Armenia and Cyprus and in the last 2 weeks.
Who's going to be on your show this afternoon, Nomi?
Oh yeah, I forgot to do that. Well, we're going to have a nice little NERA panel, because why not, with Zed Giuliani, who used to work for NERA at CAP, and Yasmin Taib, who recently ran for office in Virginia, but also worked at CAP and had an interaction. And then we have Brian Bean and Sumaya Awad, who are the co-authors of Palestine, A Socialist Introduction. It's a new book that's out.
Great. BBT, I like Bill Kibben's book, Earth. There will be a planet, but not one conducive to life as we know it. Indeed. Lancelot's Regret. Where did you hear that from? Someone watch Beat Cops? Got to disagree with you, Sam. I think at least rhetorically, we should start putting away more emphasis on the extinction of animals as an effect of climate change. I think it's much harder to get people to care about things like CO2 percentages and methane emissions than it is the killing off of entire species. Well, no, that may be right. I mean, whatever you use that you think can be effective rhetorically to get people to be motivated about climate change, yes. I think that's fine, but I don't know if people care that much about extinction. I don't know if people who don't care about climate change care about extinction of animals.
Those koala videos, though, in Australia, did you guys see those when the fire happened?
No, I can't.
Oh my God, put that in an ad. People will care.
Sunset Lake LSD, I'm losing it, bro. Leon Thotsky, question concern, seeing that COVID is going to infect millions at a rate never seen before in the coming months, what if the virus mutates? Does anyone know if a mutation in the COVID virus will make the vaccines that are already to be distributed ineffective? No, that's a good question. Maybe I'll reach out to Mark Allen Derry about that. But my understanding, and I'm going to read a little bit more into this over the next week or two, is that the mRNA technology is such that it actually protects you from the shape of the coronavirus as much as it does the actual genetic makeup of the virus. And so it really has more to do with protecting you from the delivery mechanism. That's why he was speculating, and it was complete speculation, that it could actually help with things like the common cold.
They are worried about it mutating through things like animals. Like they killed all the mink farms. They killed all the minks on mink farms in Denmark as a result of an infection outbreak there.
Yes. Well,
that's something to keep an eye on.
Yes.
Some coats for some rich people.
And then there was something that because of the way that these minks died or something, they got inflated and they started popping up out of the ground.
Ew.
What?
Yeah.
Oy.
Magnus McLaughlin. All right, well, just a couple more minutes of this. I need you to bring back La Poupée. I don't know if we can do that. We'll see.
You need someone to record it then.
MIDI doctors.
Do your covers.
Do the covers of La Poupée. I guess we could do it, right?
Yeah.
Matt, unhide Aldwatch. Hit the button. Hit the like button, folks. Oh, yeah. Subscribe to the show. I've been meaning to do that for a long time.
I've been meaning to tell people to subscribe.
Yeah, we want to hit 1 million before the end of the year. And we're at like 20,000 away or something.
Wow.
As soon as like it was like Pac-Man, he like sucked all of our subscribers. Like it's like he's like a vampire.
Mm-hmm.
And he sucked all of our subscriber like additions. Like we were humming along at something like 20, 25,000 or 30,000 a month. And then like Pac-Man did something and our subscribers got like halved per month and he got them all.
Hugo Chavez.
Yeah.
Obviously.
Is this more Chavez?
Oh, and just coincidentally, I guess.
These late night subscription drops.
Yeah, but Pac-Man speaks Spanish.
Pac-Man speaks Spanish.
Where do you pick
Who
that
else
up?
spoke Spanish?
That gives Barr a job now.
Spanish.
He can investigate.
Guess what language they speak in
Venezuela.
Well, in Venezuela. Also, guess what language they speak in Cuba?
Oh.
What is the primary language that the Cuban intelligence uses? Spanish.
All of their family members too.
I don't know. Bottom structure. Requests for mail-in ballots in Georgia have been leaning heavily towards Republicans, last I saw reported. Bottom structure. Neera defended being online as a character she's portraying online, and those aren't her actual views in politics. What?
Wait, she said that? I missed that one. How could I?
Penny from New Mexico, please have Juan Gonzalez on as a guest to discuss his analysis of the BIPOC vote, particularly the Latino vote.
If you can point us to the analysis that he's made already, that would be great.
Yes,
I haven't been able to find it.
Reporters@gmail.com if he's written something or whatever it is. Left of the box, Nomiki, I admire you for running for a seat. Your perseverance to speaking out for progressive ideas is inspirational, and everyone with the MR crew is pretty cool as well. Thank you.
Very nice.
Thank you. Very sweet.
Trumpy Bear, I can excuse racism, but I draw the line at cuts to Social Security.
What?
I don't quite get that. Obamagate is either the conspiracy to spy on Trump's 2016 campaign or something that has to do with Obama being a Muslim. Doug, Sam, regarding Kowalski's comments, to save the planet in a form that is livable to humans requires preserving as much biodiversity as possible. The health of soils and the very air we breathe depends not on just the right levels of carbon, nitrogen, etc., but on countless interactions between countless organisms. In short, no more animals means no more us. Yes, I think that is. Wait, is Pac-Man from Venezuela?
He was born there, yeah.
Argentina, right?
Oh, he's really.
Someone did that. Yeah, in Argentina.
Yeah, I think Argentina, not Venezuela.
Definitely Argentina.
It's basically the same thing, guys.
Yeah, it's all South America, all scary.
Wildcard 26. Me, Marine with 6 deployments. My father, a black gay Vietnam vet who died of AIDS Christmas Day 2005. I'm sorry. Merry fracking Christmas. And yes, remember HIV Day. The Iraq War was the end of my association with the Republican and centrist thinking. Chadius Stevens. Ted Kaczynski was a child prodigy and the youngest professor in the history of Berkeley. Eesh. Sam Seder Bra Salesman on Hugo Chavez's deathbed. He said to me, "Me pregunta cómo le iría a tu cabello en una tormenta de nieve." Amy, 2020.
Maybe 2020.
Wouldn't it be Amy Biente? Felonious Crunk. My favorite Rudy calls on not even a show, or when Chris asked Rudy what it was like having sex with his own cousin. Yeah. He was married to his own cousin at one point. Barrett Home 2, MR Baklava, please.
Oh.
Baklava.
Are you making me? I have to make MR baklava now? Is that like
MR balaclava?
Oh.
Good idea, actually, but you could wear a mask.
It's that season.
Hugo Voting Machine Inspector, how about $2,000 direct payment to every person who gets the vaccine? Direct stimulus, mass buy-in for vaccine. That's a great idea. Actually.
Brilliant.
Wyoming, Ryan, we've reached nearly 1,000 new infections a day here. Officially 816 yesterday. Our city has about 70,000 people. Jesus. That's insane. 1,000 new infections a day with a population of 70,000?
Wait, where is this? Which I missed the town.
Wyoming.
Our city has about 70,000. While we do tend to aggregate, maybe he's talking all of Wyoming, and his city is okay. The problem is 46% wear masks publicly indoors, according to Johns Hopkins. Also, I've seen family members show flu-like symptoms at some point in 2020 that assumed it was COVID, so they didn't wear a mask. And then
I heard a story in North Dakota of an entire workplace where people were literally speculating if there was some kind of mildew issue because people had some respiratory problems, and it turned out it was just COVID. But that's how far the denial is, that they didn't even suspect COVID. They thought it was some kind of mold.
It's so nuts. All right, 3 more. K.R. McNamee, Ruben is going to retire. Don't threaten me with a good time. Kevin in Bucks County. Science people don't care about your fees. Honestly, I don't see a way any vaccine can be mandated outside of schools. I think all other private entities like workplaces, airplanes, et cetera, could maybe require vaccination confirmation to be able to not wear a mask, but that's about it. And the final IM of the day. New York Times, this is from A.B. Hishek. New York Times is reporting that Giuliani discussed a preemptive pardon with Trump. I wonder if that's for him or for Trump. We'll find out tomorrow. Good job, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Watch Nomi's show.
Yes. Thanks, guys.
To get to where I want, but I know somehow I'm gonna get there. I wasn't looking when I just got caught between the truth and the lie bar. But finding out won't make me feel any better. Yeah, I know the clock is ticking, but the meds are gonna kick in, and my pilot light shining bright. I guess somewhere the choice was made for the option where you don't get paid, for the road that bends before it finally breaks.